Get started, Michael.
Great, thanks, Robin. I want to welcome everybody to the January 15th, 2026 meeting of the Seattle Design Commission. Our meetings are recorded through MS Teams and posted on our website afterwards. From 9 until 10:30 today, we're getting a briefing by both the City Sound Transit 3 team and Sound Transit. Welcome. Their quarterly update, they've been giving quarterly updates to the Seattle Design Commission about larger issues with the investments and timing and a variety of things, both from the city and Sound Transit's perspective. That briefing will last until 10:30. From 10:30 till noon, we will be evaluating or providing comment on a pre-petition vacation review for a Seattle Public Utility water quality facility in the South Park neighborhood. That review will be led today by Shireen Masudi. Why don't we go ahead and start with introductions? We do have one commissioner attending virtually today, and we'll make sure that we recognize him and make sure that we don't lose you, Eric, online today. We'll go ahead and start with introductions in the room with Shireen.
Hi, I'm Shireen Masudi, the Atlas Commissioner.
Hi, Kate Clark, Art Commissioner.
Zubin Rao, Architecture Commissioner.
Ray Gastel, Planning Commissioner.
Morning, Kevin O'Neill, Transportation Planning Commissioner and Chair.
Phoebe Bogert, Landscape Architect Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Eric, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Lipio, and I'm the Get Engaged Commissioner.
Thanks, Eric. Jason, do you want to start with introduction?
Yeah, happy to. Jason Hampton with West Seattle Link Extension. I'm the commercial director, which supports all of the third-party coordination for the project.
And I'm Brian Mason, project manager for the Grand Going Access Road Linkville Station projects.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alex Krieg. I am part of Sound Transit's planning team and here to talk to you about the enterprise initiative.
And Justin Clark, I'm the agreements lead for both West Seattle and Ballard Link extensions. And whoever's owning the meeting, can you let me into the meeting?
Robin, could you let Justin in? My computer won't allow me to be in the meeting and mute myself, so I'm having to rely on other people. Thanks, Robin.
I don't have any request in the lobby.
City
There's
light
nobody
rail
waiting in
briefing.
the lobby.
Is anybody got the mute? Is that the right one?
Yeah.
I see Justin in the meeting.
You see me in the meeting, you said?
Yeah, like that you're logged in.
It says that someone will let me in shortly.
Okay, let's see.
I don't see anybody. Yeah, I don't have any notification that anyone's in the lobby.
I'll go while we try to. Hey, everyone, I'm Gavin Schaefer, new to the table. I'm design director on the Ballard Link extension focused on stations. Nice to meet you all.
And we have a number of people in the room with us today.
Yeah, hi folks, Julie Montgomery, Sound Transit's Director of Architecture and Art, and support role today. And Molly Slikomic, lead urban designer on Ballard Link Extension, supporting Gavin.
I am Cody Ryder, Sound Transit Government and Community Relations.
Sarah Mixon, Sound Transit Program Director at the City. Yes, table next.
Eric Randall, Planning Manager.
Eric Trin, Sound Transit Program Equity Advisor.
Are you in, Justin?
Not in. No.
That wasn't Justin who I saw. I thought Kate Clark. Do you want to send another request?
Maybe can you, there in the invite, there are two Teams links. So I've tried both of them.
Do we have the presentation?
That you don't know.
Sorry about this. The City Light Rail Team briefing.
How about, and Michael, you're not logged in?
No, because my microphone won't mute.
Justin, you can email it to Wendy.
Yes.
What should I email you? You could just email a note.
Yeah, let me spell it out. for
Oh,
you.
the
You won't-
presentation.
Yeah, WINDY dot Vanderker.
It's a large file.
How large?
I think it's 50.
That should be 50?
That might not go through.
You might have-
Are you in the meeting?
Yeah, can you maybe just re-forward the invite? I have there's two links here, so maybe if you could just forward me the meeting link,
All right.
that's the correct one.
We've been so good at this, not having any significant tech problems.
I have a USB. You just got it.
I saw you in the lobby.
You just got it.
Just go like, yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, he's in now.
There are a couple.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, it's like Justin's in.
We're winning.
Huh?
There are a couple folks that can't hear audio that are online, so Vera and Saranya are both online that can't hear any audio.
Are you hosting, Michael? Just with a 50 MG file, we may have some delays. So everyone knows that's probably what it is. It's things freeze up.
The table microphones are green and this is not muted, so I'm not sure why they can't hear.
I can hear, I'm remote and I can hear.
Working.
All right,
Nice.
we're winning.
Success.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all for having us today. We're happy to join here for the second time doing the quarterly briefing here with the team. Just a little context setting, when we met with y'all back in the fall, the first quarterly briefing from this team, the enterprise initiative at the agency was relatively new initiative, and it's focused on optimizing designs across all of the capital program to address the financial constraints at the agency. And so at that time, we focused on our presentation, West Seattle Link, as we've had a lot of new opportunities, optimization opportunities there that we were presenting. This time around, we'd like to set a little more context of the status of the enterprise initiative, give you some insight on how that's affecting the full capital program across all of Sound Transit. And then we'll dive into, so that's why we have Alex here. Appreciate him joining the team here. And then we'll dive into West Seattle Link Extension, provide a short update there with Jason. I'd like to introduce Gavin for the first time to the commission here to give an update on Ballard. And then we're introducing for the first time Graham Street Info Station, which I know you all know a lot about, but excited to really give you some background from the Sound Transit, all of the Sound Transit work that's been happening to date. We don't have a lot of time today, so it's really just a primer that we'll dive into further when design review comes later on in the year, early next year. So that's kind of the plan for today, and looking forward to having a conversation afterwards. But I'll pass to Alex to talk Enterprise Initiative.
Great, cool, that's me. Good morning again, everybody. My name is Alex Krieg. I'm going to talk to you about this thing called the Enterprise Initiative. I will start by saying this is a scaled down presentation on this work. I could talk and talk. I'm not going to do that to you today. But I am going to describe kind of what's going on, and my understanding is the interest here is like, how does this affect some of the projects that are coming before the Design Commission? The Enterprise Initiative is sort of shorthand for just we at Sound Transit have right now a mismatch between our projected expenditures and our projected revenues. We have much higher projected revenues than we do, or sorry, expenditures than we do revenues. We have to make our finance plan balance. I'll talk a little bit about what's going on there, but ultimately it is about ensuring that we can deliver sort of the maximal benefits of the ST3 program with our still very abundant resource that we do have. This is not a thing the agency hasn't gone through before. Most recently in 2020 and 2021, we had to go through an exercise to realign our program. This also happened following the Great Recession in 2009-10. Past practice at Sound Transit is really focused on just really like delaying projects and reducing scope of our capital program only. Obviously, in the past several years, we've grown as an operating agency with many new lines opening. This time, I think we want to approach things more comprehensively, looking not just at our capital program, but also at our capital program, but how we deliver service, how we maintain assets, our planning and policy assumptions that were embedded in the ST3 plan adopted in 2016, recognizing all of the change the region and the nation's experienced in that time. The board has also given us direction to do some things. One thing is anytime we have a system plan out of alignment, we have to put it back in. So the first step is to update our ST3 system plan. Direction given by the board was by the end of Q2 2026. I always like to say it says with the goal of, I really hang my hat on that language. They also directed us to update, actually create a new regional transit long range plan. We haven't really revisited that document since 2014. And ultimately, we do update our long range financial plan every year. So to have a sort of balanced and affordable finance plan by the end of the year. So the next slide is really just kind of the scale of the problem that we're facing. This is information that we provided to the Sound Transit Board of Directors in August. We have been able to sort of refine these numbers, but generally speaking, I think, especially as it relates to the capital program, this tells a story of just like the range of the problem that we're dealing with. The total impact is in the 20 to 25% above what we were carrying in the fall 2024 long range financial plan. That plan size is approximately $150 million or $1 billion. The pressures that we're seeing, especially on the capital program, such that you've heard about some of the cost growth on West Seattle and Ballard, but that's also true for our Everett and Tacoma Dome link extension projects. We also carried forward some of the cost pressures we're seeing into projects we haven't started that are part of the ST3 program, including light rail investments in Tacoma and on the east side. We're also seeing pressures in parts of our program that are related to service delivery and operations and maintenance, and then also some revenue and financing challenges as a result of a slower regional economy, but also higher financing costs. On the next slide, so this is just a little bit of what the board has directed us to do. And I guess what I would say is some of the milestones that we've had with our board of directors in 2025 was in the middle of the year, late May. We had a board retreat in which we sort of kicked off this enterprise initiative where we sort of knew we were going to be facing affordability challenges. In August, we were able to quantify the scale of the impact, shared the slide that I just reviewed. The board at that time also adopted a motion that directs the work. The first thing that they told us to do was to develop a comprehensive framework, which we brought back to them at a retreat that they had in November. Again, there's a lot of content we've been developing for this. There's like 2 more slides here, so you're not going to get a whole lot more. One of the things that they directed us to do out of that retreat in November was to develop scenarios, plausible, affordable scenarios for an updated plan. So that's kind of what we're working on now. The next slide is, I think, animated, and I'm sorry that I did that because I never, honestly,
Never be sorry about animated slides.
This is like a very simplified look at like our kind of comprehensive work plan. We've organized the work into 4 major work streams. You can see how this slide is set up. The top half will tell you what that work stream entails. The bottom half will tell you what are the tools and levers available to the board. We've been really sort of purposeful in saying that there are actually a lot of opportunities to solve this problem. You've heard about some of the cost savings opportunities our capital project teams are exploring, but there are also opportunities in these other domains as well. So in planning and policy, this is where we work together, Justin. We're going to be looking at our existing plans, policies, and assumptions. We obviously have a lot of change conditions, especially with how people are moving around, making mobility decisions. What were the investments that we made in ST3 and what are we seeing now? This is a chance to revisit those. So the tools and levers, are updating those policies, modifying those assumptions, and that may have a benefit to how we can solve this affordability challenge. On the capital delivery side, really what project teams are doing is looking at cost savings approaches, a range of from design optimizations to how we might phase projects. That is going to help us understand we still have robust resource available. How do we make sure we're maximizing that resource? On the service delivery side, what I would say is we're in this kind of period of fast growth in how we operate, especially a growing light rail system. We're getting better information about the costs we were assuming and the costs we're actually seeing, not just to operate the service, to maintain those assets, and also to make sure that what we built can operate reliably and have be like just a resilient experience for passengers. And then on the finance side, part of this is making sure that what we plan to do, we can actually do. But also like, what are those things that, those opportunities that exist to maximize our financial capacity to deliver as much of a program as possible. So this last slide, I think it's the last, no, this is the second to last slide. You're design people, I thought you might like a graphic. This is a graphic we developed for the board retreat in November to try to articulate how these different work streams will both move along their own course, but there are a lot of like dependencies and relationships between these component pieces, and we wanted to be mindful about indicating those. We started with like a roadmap idea, and it ended up kind of looking like a transit system map, and that felt pretty apropos. So then the last slide that I have, and then happy to answer questions or turn it over to the next presenter, is what are we doing now? As I mentioned, we got direction from our board to develop plausible affordable scenarios. We're putting those together. We're going to continue to engage our board, especially through their committees on these specific components. I'd also note we have an 18-member board at Sound Transit. We have 5 new members as of mid-December. Obviously, this is a big problem that our board is going to have to solve, but you know, maybe there's some sympathy to the new board members. We want to definitely get them up to speed as quickly as we can. And then we're also anticipating another really focused engagement with our board as soon as late next month, but maybe more likely into March. So that's my, I don't know how long I went, but hopefully short enough overview of this one.
And I know Alex is about to run, so I do wonder if there are a couple questions if folks have any on the enterprise initiative before we shift to the specific project presentations. I know that's a little out of order, but.
Well, so I think a question a number of us have had about this, and we might, I don't know if it's appropriate for Sound Transit and the city or both, but and I don't want to go into a lot of detail on this because we have a lot to cover, but we're interested in the criteria that's being used to make these decisions, right? And specifically how urban design and TOD, which are things that we often drill down on, are factored into that. Can you say a little bit about that?
I can say a little bit about that. And, you know, I would emphasize also with my city friends and colleagues, there's obviously a lot of interest. We want to work collaboratively, recognizing, especially on our sort of projects in the North King sub area, there's a lot of value in trying to make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. And that's like all of our collective efforts to deliver these investments, because it's not just Sound Transit investments, it's also city investments. I think there are a couple of things that sort of guide the work that we're doing. One is we do have a voter approved system plan. There was a set of like performance criteria and objectives embedded in that plan around ridership, travel times, some of the benefits that we estimated would occur. The board, in that motion that they adopted in August, established some guiding principles. There are specifically 4 of them. One is around, this is where I should have it like really internalized these, but there's one around sort of like regional connectivity. There's one around supporting future growth. There's one around prioritizing the passenger experience, and then there's one around sort of fiscal stewardship. And I think our job, and as we come up with these scenarios, is to try to articulate some of the tensions at play within and between those. I think in service to like, what are some of the big policy questions the board need to wrestle with and give some direction on? And I would also say the opportunities we want to look at as well include the kind of catalyzing effect that our projects can have on communities. We obviously, as an agency, have a robust TOD program. We're looking at joint development opportunities. There are revenue implications for some of those choices that this can also help give us some clearer direction of sort of our what we're trying to achieve and how that might help us again deliver sort of maximal, not just maximal program, but maximal benefit.
Thank you.
Any last enterprise initiative questions before we kick Alex out? That's joy.
Thank you.
And then we'll pass it to Jason to share about West Seattle.
Thanks, Justin. And good to be back. Good news for you before I dive in. I only have 4 slides today, so you don't have to listen to me for as long as you normally have to.
Never mind.
But I'll be back with a lot more in the future. So just a upfront reminder, West Seattle Extension Project, which would be the 3-line. It includes 4.1 miles of light rail service connecting the West Seattle neighborhoods into SoDo and into the regional transit system, the light rail network, eventually extending all the way through the existing tunnel up to Northgate and beyond. This light rail extension would reduce travel time by providing about a 50% reduction from Alaska Junction to Westlake Station, taking a trip that's typically 30 minutes now down to 16 minutes. So that's 14 minutes, 28 minutes a day that people that are going back and forth will get back to whatever they want besides sit in traffic. It improves frequency, reliability, and capacity so that 16-minute trip will be all the time, not dependent on traffic, and it'll be more frequent than the current bus service that serves the community. It also provides a travel alternative if the West Seattle Bridge is congested or closed for repairs, which we all experience over 2020 and beyond. Next slide. So when we came out in, I believe, September with an update on the West Seattle extension, we provided some bad news, right? So some of what Alex talked about, the project was not affordable. We've had our engineering design services team in the building since July, and we've just reauthorized an extension of that contract to continue their great work. We've been taking kind of a strategic approach to final design to really think about the cost saving measures, revalidating the preliminary engineering, which you all reviewed, with a lens of the feedback we got from the city staff as well as SDC, but also realizing some cost saving measures. We've made good progress there. We're continuing that work. And all of this is being done utilizing board approved authorized budgets already. So we haven't added budget to the project in order to do this. We've kind of moved some funds around to ensure that we're being good stewards of the financing. And then, you know, this is a bit of a hurdle, right? Trying to solve this problem, but we're trying to advance design in such a way that as the board makes decisions about projects in the future, that we're able to best achieve the goals of the region and deliver this project as quickly as possible. Next slide. So this is a bit of the milestones on the project. So about 4 years ago, we published the draft EIS along with the Ballard project. We transitioned toward the final EIS for West Seattle as Ballard continues to look at some alternatives to their project. We published our final EIS in September of 2024, and the board identified the project to be designed and built in October of 2024. And then we received the first record of decision from the FTA under the new administration in early 2025. As I mentioned before, we're continuing to advance the design work that kind of focus on cost savings that will realize an affordable project while delivering the transit service to West Seattle that the voters asked for. Some of the dates on the bottom are kind of in flux. We're continuing to look to bring on a systems final designer and some pre-construction services for what we call the W200 or Duwamish Bridge project. Some of those things are a bit on hold as we look for the board to make some decisions on the overall plan. But we are prepared to hit the ground running as quickly as possible once we have that direction. Next slide. So while the project is kind of going over that hurdle and a little bit slowed down while we're endeavoring to accomplish the enterprise objectives, we're continuing to progress the design, as I mentioned, and working with the city on updated designs and station access. The city's going out and doing their own work around access to the stations, and we're continuing to engage with the community. So there's a lot of questions about this project, much of the same questions you all have, the community's asking. So we're continuing to do that engagement with our agency partners and with property owners and tenants and general community members as well as we advance the design. And that'll continue through 2027 as we continue to advance the design. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but we would expect to bring our 30% designs in late 2026 or early 2027, should everything go well with the enterprise plan and decisions being made in the middle of this year. So again, just 4 slides today, and I'll shut up.
Thanks, Jason. All right, we'll shift over to Gavin to share about Ballard.
Right, and I only have 2 slides. It's even better news. So, the Ballard Link extension is going to add 7.7 miles of light rail from downtown Seattle to the Ballard neighborhood. The extension includes a new downtown Seattle tunnel. It is going to improve service, frequency, reliability, and capacity while facilitating redevelopment near the stations, focusing on equitable transit-oriented development. You can see the preferred alternative in pink there, the proposed stations in the DEIS would have other alternatives. And that's really the high-level summary on Ballard. Is right now we are waiting for our DEIS publication in early 2026. That will be followed by a board action to confirm or modify the PA with final EIS on the FTA dashboard right now. It's late 2026, followed by a record of decision. While that's going on, as you can see below, we're working on our preliminary engineering and are hoping to begin final design in 2027. You can see there's a lot of things in flux there due to the DIS publication. Next slide. Here you can see it graphically where we are in pink, showing environmental review, preliminary engineering, and community engagement happening at the same time. So for the last year, in the middle line there in purple, you can see we've been identifying and implementing cost savings as part of preliminary engineering. And the environmental review, we're waiting on that DEIS. So we're hoping to have a DEIS public comment period. We've had some preliminary discussions about coming to the SDC during that period that we've been coordinating with the city.
So we'll close up our time with Brian to share about Graham Street.
Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm Brian Masick, project manager of Sound Transit on the Graham and Boeing Access Road infill stations. Those are 2 separate projects, but advancing together with similar Sound Transit team and consultant team. But Boeing Access Road is in the city of Tukwila, so we will not be talking about that one today. We're focused on Graham Street. This is going to be pretty high level. Again, a quarterly update, but we are happy to come back if you are seeking additional details or an actual design review later on, hopefully the end of this year or early next year. So Graham Street Station, this is an at-grade station between the existing Columbia City and Othello stations on MLK. This does not include any parking, transit, layover, or anything like that, but we are working closely with our partners at the city and King County Metro. My transit service to the station includes the normal upgrades to roadways, sidewalks, utilities, but we are looking to improve access and safety to the station. And the opening date is still targeted for 2031. So the benefits of this station are really all about access. The people out there in the community have dealt with the construction and see the train go by every day, but can't get on. And so this is really opening access to the greater system, jobs, housing, recreation, restaurants, all those good things, healthcare. We do know, working with our partners at the city of Seattle, expecting future growth in the Othello area and then the Graham Street area, which this will help with. And then fully recognizing there's a lot of room for improvements in terms of non-motorized connections, sidewalks, crossings, bike lanes, transit connections. And so just to give you a look at where we are in the timeline, you've probably seen a similar graphic for all of our projects. We're in the early stages in the green, we're in planning. And we basically started around the beginning of 2023, working through different design options. Then the board selected one design option to carry into conceptual engineering and environmental review. We've basically wrapped up conceptual engineering, environmental review continues on. And as of last week, we just got board approval to advance into preliminary engineering. So that should be starting in the next few weeks. And so just trying to highlight, this is extremely high level, but things that we've heard from the community. Number one is safety. I'm sure all of you are very aware the safety issues with at-grade rail through the Rainier Valley. We are working closely with the at-grade crossing safety team internally to Sound Transit, in addition to SDOT folks to improve safety at our station area and along the entire corridor. Other big thing is minimizing disruptions and businesses. We fully admit there will be effects on this area. There's no getting around it. Both construction, duration, noise, dust, traffic, all of those things will happen, but we are working to minimize them. We have learned from Central Link and other projects through our system, and we are prioritizing that in our designs now. Another big thing, as I mentioned, is increasing access. There are inadequate sidewalks, missing sidewalks, unsafe crossings. Akakarose Middle School is very close by, trying to make it so kids can walk to this station safely. So improving all those connections is really important. And then we keep hearing over and over, build the station as soon as possible. And we are working on that. Just so folks know, for the history lesson, Graham was included as far back in the environmental review of Central Link. 1999, 2000 was deferred due to cost, reinvigorated with ST3, reaffirmed in realignment in 2021, and now we are here trying to get this built 2030. And so just these next couple slides are just kind of giving an overview of the area. Apologies for the very small size of this graphic, but the point of this is that there are several neighborhoods that really make up the Graham neighborhood, and there are tons of community assets that we are looking to preserve and improve access to. Tons of community centers, religious centers, libraries, schools, you name it. A huge community of small businesses right around the station area that we hope to improve access for. And again, apologies for the small size. We'll send this out so you can see it, and happy to provide more detail in the actual design review meeting. But transit in the area, obviously there's Link Light Rail there. The closest stop is Othello, about 0.6 miles to the south. We got the Metro Route 106 on MLK, which likely will remain, the 7 and the 9 on Rainier. And we are working closely with our partners at Metro and the City of Seattle and the community to hopefully realize a new east-west Metro route on Graham. It obviously has funding constraints for operations with Metro, but hopefully we can all work together to realize that. It would be a huge benefit to the community. And then bike facilities are shown on the right. And one of the main benefits, you can see the yellow is the neighborhood greenway, just about a block to the east. And we hope to strengthen the bike connections to that facility with our station and throughout the station. And so we're working closely with our wonderful partners here at the City of Seattle. You all may be aware there was a community-based organization-led vision for the station area led by Puget Sound Sage. They brought together about a dozen other community groups to get ahead of our work and document what they love about this neighborhood, what they want to preserve, what they want it to look like. So our work is really just building off of that, recognizing a lot of work has already been done. And with that, we're working through the ST3 group at the city, but it includes SDOT with BCD, City Light, and SPU. And we're focusing, of course, on safety, the station area planning, the roadway, the sidewalk, utilities, and equity engagement. And I'm not going to read this slide, but I just wanted to highlight our phase 1 and 2. So that's during our design option selection and conceptual engineering, these were our guiding racial equity tool outcomes. And we can, obviously you can read this after the fact, but trying to make this a station that the community feels welcome, provides access to the people there, and trying to reduce the impacts to the community. And so just to hit on a little bit, sustainability, this is very much in progress, but we are pursuing Envision Platinum certification, not LEED because it is not an enclosed building. We're just kind of kicking that off right now. We should have our preliminary assessment towards the second half of the year. And this is just a snapshot of a couple sustainability strategies we're looking at, but trying to divert landfill waste, reduce our embodied carbon, and looking at a whole life cycle assessment. And so this slide is meant to capture, while there are a lot of community priorities, there are a lot of assets out there, there are a lot of challenges with this station area. While it is infill and at grade, it is not going to be easy. The track is actually not tangent at the station area. North of Graham, there's a vertical curve, and south of Graham, there's a slight horizontal curve. So we're working through different design options for those. One of the reasons we selected the center platform shifted to the east is because there's a 42-inch sewer main in the immediate southbound lane of MLK, and we do not want to move it or build on top of it. There's also another 32-inch sewer line on the north side of MLK. We've been working closely with the city on what the road is going to look like after the fact. We're providing the same number of lanes that are there now with a lot wider sidewalks. So all of those things take up space. Safety features, we're looking at improved signage, crossings, signals, pedestrian refuge islands. And one of the biggest things that we've been working on since day one is how do we keep the system operating during construction? That is one of the biggest challenges with an infill. We've learned a lot from Pinehurst Station. We've learned a lot from Vancouver. TransLink has a station called Capstan. It's not going to be easy. There will be a lot of single tracking. There will be some times of full closures, but we're trying to keep those to absolute minimum and incorporate into our design ways to minimize those effects on operations. And so just trying to highlight, we're only at 10% design now, but there have been, we have incorporated community feedback already into that design. So safety, the representative project in ST3 had side platforms, but we selected a center platform. It improves safety. Folks only have to cross one set of tracks. It also makes it a lot easier in the future for any single tracking event. People make it easier to get to just one place than where to go. And we're also obviously upgrading all the safety features in the area. We're working closely with ST operations and the city of Seattle, trying to reduce all those utility conflicts and looking at maintenance of traffic from an early stage and preserving access. We think the location south of Graham is really important because the street grid is a lot better there, both with sidewalks and roadways to be able to get people to and from the station. And in addition to the immediate station area, of course, we'll be working on our non-motorized station access allowance with the city of Seattle to increase the improvements around the station. And then we're going to be looking at modular designs, precast designs, trying to make this as plug and play as possible during construction. We recognize our night windows of work when Link is shut down are very small. So we want to take advantage of that as much as possible and do as much of the work without impacting operations. So another one of those things that we're doing is we're also installing a new crossover at MLK and Juno Street, just north of the station, to minimize that distance of single track during station construction. So just highlighting some upcoming engagement. Starting earlier this year, we're going to be focused on that stationary planning. City team and Sound Transit team have been hard at work identifying non-motorized improvements, and then we're going to start getting into prioritizing those. Continuing to work with King County Metro and the team at OPCD on land use planning and zoning, and then obviously working with Alex, who just presented on Enterprise Initiative. Then we'll be getting into environmental review. We hope to be wrapping up NEPA work in the fall, and then also getting into the SEPA work. And then we're also going to be looking at, once we wrap up environmental, we can start actually communicating our designs and looking at individual property owners in the fall. And obviously continuing our engagement. We started earlier. And so, as I mentioned, we got board approval to begin preliminary engineering last week. So we're jumping in on that now, wrapping up environmental later, and hoping to return to you all towards the end of the year or early next year, and wrap up the launch and final design.
So closing out, we're just giving a highlight of the next times you'll see us over the next year or so. We'll obviously have our next quarterly briefing in Q2. West Seattle, as we finish 30% design, we'll be coming back towards the end of the year, early next year. And then Ballard with the DEIS publication coming up, planning to come to the commission for a briefing there. And we've been talking with y'all and the city partners about what the content of that presentation will be. Then lastly, as Brian just shared, Graham Street will come at the same time with Ballard 30%. So we'll turn it over to our city partners now and then answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Do you just,
I need you to.
you run the slides?
Oh, yeah.
You run the slides.
Sorry, I didn't. Yeah. Oh, no, everyone. I'm not seeing all day. But. You don't need to say that there.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
That's here.
Sorry about that.
No. Wendy's gonna run the slide.
Sorry.
Yes. I think we have you. No, we had you, sorry, we had you introduce yourselves earlier. A lot going on today. Are you gonna kick us off?
I'll kick us off. Yeah, thanks for having us. Good to be back. I think we were here in early September, which seems like so long ago. And there's been so much that has happened. Unfortunately, on the project, there's not a whole lot of brand new information that we can share yet, but we're gonna go ahead and walk through some of the changes to the team and some of the work elements that we see coming up in 2026. And many of which we look forward to engaging you on. That's it.
I've never done this before, clearly.
I sent it as a PDF. But more just difficult than it's. All right, well, I'll start talking a little bit. So we spend almost all of our time working and thinking about Ballard Link Extension, West Seattle Link Extension, and we carve out some time for the infill stations. But here we are in a new year, and we have 2 new light rail stations opening this year. And for a team that is like such long range or projects that are so long range, it is so incredibly satisfying to get to a place where you get to actually ride the train and be a part of those openings. And so I want to start off, thinking about our year ahead. Yes, we're going to still be working on all of the planning, permitting, helping deliver those ST3, those big ST3 projects, but the Judkins Park Station and that Cross Lake connection we're expecting in spring, and the Pinehurst Station, which is an ST3 investment, expecting by the end of the year, and just really excited to be at some ribbon cuttings and be a part of the excitement. Go ahead to the next slide. So we have a few slides today to talk through, mostly focused on some changes to the team, a little bit on some of our major activities, kind of dovetailing or the building on what our partners at Sound Transit just presented on the enterprise initiative, the Ballard DEIS, FEIS, West Seattle final design and permitting, and some city-led planning efforts, and then leave a little bit of space for discussion and our future touch points. So city team, this is the slide we always use to talk about who our city team is. While we've been housed at SDOT for my entire tenure as part of this program, we are an interdepartmental effort. We're a One Seattle, One City Seattle effort to bring together all of the city departments, about 20 different departments that touch the project in one way or another, led by the Office of Waterfront Civic Projects and Sound Transit and housed at SDOT. The ST3 city team very much relies on the expertise leadership of all of those other city departments. And we have some transitions underway. We have a new mayor who took office, who campaigned with tremendous enthusiasm about transit. And so we are very excited to work with her and her administration to bring her all of the good work that our team has been doing in partnership with Sound Transit over these years, but also to find out where her direction is going to be leading us. So we're looking forward to that. One of her first actions was to appoint Angela Brady as the interim SDOT director. That position still keeps her very close to us, which we're very grateful for. She is still retaining the ST3 designated representative role. And so she is still ultimately our go-to leadership for our ST3 city team, and we'll be working very closely with her, both in that designated representative capacity, but also in her new SDOT capacity. We're looking forward to that partnership. And then another thing, just on the ST3 city team, last time we were with you in September, we were in front of council with a budget amendment that would give position authority to the city team to start staffing up in anticipation of largely in anticipation of the very significant permit volume that we're anticipating for West Seattle Link Extension. That legislation did pass at the end of September, and we were given position authority and some budget authority to start moving forward with those positions. The number 50 FTE was a big number that a lot of folks raised some eyebrows, and I think there was a narrative out there or myth out there that we had an army of planners, 50 planners. In fact, over half of those positions are field staff for SPU and SCL that will actually be out there doing the utility relocations. So it's it was a little bit of a miscommunication on what the focus of a lot of those roles are. The majority of the remaining roles are tied to permit processing, permit review, and really just helping the project move through the city processes in order to get to permits issuance and construction. A lot of those positions are partnership positions with Sound Transit, and so we'll be working on the reimbursement, which for a lot of the positions are the permit fees themselves. And so as the enterprise initiative is working through its course and determining when those projects and the sequencing and the timeline of those projects, we'll know when it's going to be appropriate for us to start staffing up. So those positions we're working on all of the job descriptions and all of the paperwork, but we haven't actually started doing any of that recruitment like that. And that brings us to the enterprise initiative. So Alex was able to give you an overview of the work that the board is doing. Of course, we are keenly interested in supporting that work and trying to have good outcomes, both for the entire region, but also for our North King sub-area and our projects here in Seattle. Alex walked through those major deliverables of the ST3 system plan, this long-range transit plan and long-range financial plan. We are really excited to see what this means for our projects, also what it means for extending our projects in the future. You know, this is one thing that ST3 included was what is the next phase of Ballard? What is the next phase of West Seattle? Bringing West Seattle down to South King County is part of ST3 doing that high capacity transit study. And so we're really looking forward to this opportunity to look at the regional long range plan, which is that opportunity to look at what are the current projects, what are the next phases of projects. And for our projects, it really means connecting them back up to the system in other places and really enhancing the mobility, the regional mobility that they're able to provide. That brings us to the ST3 projects. And we're going to just walk through maybe one slide on each of these, starting with Ballard Link Extension, the DEIS, non-motorized access, and then into West Seattle, some of those projects. Go ahead. Okay, Ballard DEIS, I think this might be the same, very similar to the slide we gave you last time. We have been getting ready for the Ballard draft EIS for the last year. We're really excited to get our hands on it and take a look. You know, we have very specific responsibilities in the draft EIS to provide comments to Sound Transit on any code compliance issues that we see, code conflicts, and any impacts and mitigation. And this is really part of our partnering agreement to make sure that then the project is ready after the environmental phase to move into final design and permitting. We're still expecting that draft EIS in Q1. The next slide. And I think this is a graphic that we've shown in the past. This has been for a long time what our plan focus is going to be when we're reviewing this DEIS, is focusing on the preferred alternative first and foremost, but really acknowledging that that preferred alternative includes 5 stations, 5 out of the 9 stations that were not in the first DEIS back in 2022. So this will be the first time we're really fully understanding the impacts of those stations. That includes the CID at Dearborn, the Midtown at James, the Denny shifted north, Seattle Center, Republican shifted west, and Inner Bay at Dravis. So we're looking forward to seeing those. We're also going to be paying some special focused attention on non-preferred alternatives, so other alternatives that are the lowest cost alternative in each segment. Just really recognizing that while the enterprise initiative is a separate effort, these 2 efforts are happening and will be, you know, the issues that we're discussing in both spaces are the same. And so where there are major cost savings that are potential cost savings because of a lower cost alternative, we want to make sure that we're giving that the same attention as the preferred alternative in the likely outcome that some of them are going to be considered as cost saving measures. One in particular that we're spending a whole lot of time thinking about is one of the alternatives has the elimination of the South Lake Union station by pulling the Denny station a little bit further west. So this Denny and South Lake Union consolidation. We've been, you know, very interested in thinking about how do we ensure that there is the regional transit connectivity for this area, connecting to the regional system. We want to acknowledge that this is the fastest growing job center in the region. This would create an area of the South Lake Union, previous South Lake Union station walkshed that would not be within the walksheds of the stations on either side on Denny and Seattle Center. So we're doing a lot of work now before we even get the draft EIS to think about what would it mean to have the loss of that station. How can we help ensure that we're making the types of investments to get folks down to the Denny station or over to the Seattle Center station? And then what are we doing with the Denny station and Seattle Center stations themselves to ensure that you know, we are not diminishing access to those stations, that we're really making those stations even better than they would have been, so that they can absorb some of that that capacity from events at Seattle Center, for example, or the, you know, very fast growing job center that is the Denny and South Lake Union area. So what we expect our comments will have quite a bit on that. Okay, I'm going to take a break from talking and hand things over to Eric for a moment to talk about the DEIS RET update, which is a document that we're expecting to happen alongside the DEIS.
Thanks, Sarah. So, for the ballot, ballot retention racial equity toolkit, so South Transit continue to advance the joint agency racial equity toolkit report. This is the same processing that we have done in 2022, but for this process, we have an updated racial equity toolkit report that focuses on just the ballot link attention project. So we finished the one city review just last month in Q4 25. We had an interdepartmental review process led by me with focus on how the racial equity toolkit report framing, the continuity of the 2022 process, and prepare staff for the additional draft ES technical related content. So round two, we expected in early 2026, just following the publication of the draft EIS. And then we're going to have more content on the upcoming summary, environmental justice content. So we have an ongoing city and South Transit coordination to ensure that the city team will be able to review and provide common and even mitigation strategy. And for the West Seattle Link Attention Racial Equity Toolkit outcome, we continue to work with South Transit to track and as well as working with them to support any ongoing engagement activity that South Transit is facilitating to make sure that we are engaging community and continue with the process, how we develop strategies to track the outcome.
Thanks. I'm going to hand things over to Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last time, I think we talked about the non-owners access projects that we're partnering with South Transit on. So we've been making progress on methodology, we finalized the criteria, we've done our scoring. So I think really the next step is getting a final prioritized list and then advancing projects to final design that are prioritized. Projects are waiting on the enterprise initiative, but we don't want to move forward with projects until we know exactly the stations and configuration of the stations for the advanced design. Same time, C is also going through here.
Katie was maybe going to be able to
Pushing
join
down
online. I'm not sure if Katie is joined
Yeah.
online yet.
Like we'll be seeing station area planning engagement really kicking off very soon, actually. So we'll be trying to coordinate both station area engagement, non-artist access engagement at the same time. So we're talking to the same communities about the same area. Consistent thing. Yes, similar. Non-riders will be waiting for advancing street concept plans once the enterprise initiative. What stations are where, how they're configured, and we may have to do some changes to our concept plans in response to changes to the station areas. I know so far I came on, but there was a lot of review by the commission on station area or street concept plans. And so we'll sort of wait to see what our next steps on will be modified as well. For the non-motorized access allowance, talk about West Seattle for Graham. We're actually very close to moving forward. So we will be doing this initial screening step, and then in end of February, early March, we'll be getting our first community engagement on those projects to really inform which of those we want to advance for conceptual. We have been even a month and a half here. And after we get those results, we'll probably start summer for conceptual design on some of the projects, advancing those. And then Ballard, non-Mars access is still, we're just building the list of candidate projects right now. So that's over time, like getting work out and then, and we'll probably be building that list and maybe starting the screening stuff by the year. Next slide. Yeah.
I think that gets into station area planning, which I'm not sure if Katie has joined us yet, but just did, yeah. Katie, Eric and I were gonna take this slide, but if you're on and you want to take it, feel
Oh
free.
boy. Yeah, I can do that. So hi, apologies. I was out most of the night with a really bad fever, so I'm like a little loopy
Oh.
right now. It's totally, but that's why I'm not there in person. So sorry. And I'm looking great. So, hi everyone. Happy to be here. Stationary planning. So as many of you know, OPCD and SDOT are, amongst our other departments are, really partnering on how we are coordinating and engaging with communities who will be getting new light rail to really think about how we can grow and improve those neighborhoods, both mobility, housing, sort of all the community essentials around these new light rail stations. So right now we're focusing our efforts on Graham and the West Seattle line. And so Graham launched last summer. They actually wrapped up their first phase of engagement. They put out their engagement summary report. It is on our website. I highly encourage you to take a look at that. It is excellent, tons of great feedback, really good engagement. And so we're taking that right now and starting to sort of, start translating what we heard into the first sort of outline of what this action plan might look like, what the strategies are that we can bring to the table to come back to community in later this, spring. Hopefully with some additional engagement around those ideas. For West Seattle, we put some things on pause as some stuff was sort of, moving around with the enterprise initiative and some other things. But we are launching our broader outreach later in February. We'll be putting out a survey and doing some in-person engagement with CBOs and other organizations in the neighborhood. So right now we're kind of doing that early reaching out to folks to let them know it's coming, to start talking about what it's going to be and what we're going to be looking at. In Delridge, we actually have been running a focus group with some local CBOs. And so we've had 2 sessions already, and that's been creating a really great foundation for us in terms of the topics that we talk about and how, what people want to focus on for the Delridge neighborhood. We have an updated website. It's still a little bit in progress. There's some IT things on the back end. But there's a little mini survey out there right now that's essentially just asking folks kind of for big picture vision, opportunity, challenges, just so we can start to get some feedback trickling in while we're getting the rest of the broader engagement set up. Yeah, that's what I got for now.
And then the additional planning efforts, Katie, I know there's not a whole lot new to report on either of these 2, but just wanted to leave space in case you had any updates.
So I think the most interesting part here, I think, as it relates to the commission's work, is really around our centers planning. So PSRC sort of has changed their sort of process for how we designate and certify our centers. And so that requires us doing regional plans for all of our centers. So OPCD has been working through these. It's a lot of them. It's a ton of work. The downtown one plan the draft has been published. So again, go check it out. It's great. So where this intersects with some of our light rail stations and some of our stationary planning has always been a bit of a question. Just in terms of the time horizon for these plans, in terms of the time horizon for the delivery of new light rail stations. And so this will really be a thing to think about as we're looking at particularly our South Lake Union, our Uptown, and our Ballard plans, and really thinking about how that planning work can coordinate and sort of walk hand in hand with all the work the Office of the Waterfront is doing, but also with the stationary planning efforts. So there's still some questions there around the timing of these things, how it all fits together, but we'll be working on sort of sorting that out over the coming months as we learn more from Sound Transit about their timelines for delivery.
All right, and then just over on West Seattle Link Extension, we are still supporting, while the enterprise initiative is playing out, and we'll determine the next steps for all of the projects at a project delivery sense. We are still doing work trying to help Sound Transit get to a project that is ready to go into permitting. And so we do have this this scary mountain of permit slide that we show every once in a while that indicates the volume of permit activity that we are anticipating for the project. This is just for West Seattle, and then that line in the middle shows where Ballard Link Extension permitting could start. It's just a very large scale of, very high volume of permits. And so we are trying to get ready for the team to be ready to receive all of those permits as soon as we get through this enterprise initiative, hoping that our projects continue on their path to move forward. And then just to wrap up, upcoming touch points, we of course have the formal project reviews that are part of our land use code, where we'll be coming to you for the PE pre-permitting project review for Graham, the 30% for Wisley, and the pre-permitting project reviews for Ballard in 2027. And of course, we have other touch points with you as well, and expecting later this spring in coordination with the Ballard DEIS as an opportunity to come and talk a little bit about with you and with our partners at Sound Transit about the Elliott Guideway, which has been an issue that you've identified as being of interest to the commission, and recognizing that the DEIS comment periods will be a time that a lot of that information will be out in public discourse. That will also be an opportunity. What we've done in the past during the DEIS comment period back in 2022 was we did engagement about what the city was seeing and what was likely to be in our comments, and coming in front of the commission. That would be a welcome opportunity for us to share out some of the things that we've been seeing and the things that we are likely to comment on in our letter. And then, of course, we will have our regular quarterly updates.
And then I guess the only thing I would add to that, Sarah, and it's not that this doesn't necessarily account for what you talked about earlier, which is if there is a minimum operating segment, whatever the reduced cost options are, I think that maybe that might be a commission touch point as well, the relative concerns about if you do remove a station, and that is what happens to movement through the corridor, what are the urban design and placemaking things that change as a result of that. We don't need to decide that today, but I think that might be something that, given the nature of some of that work, that the commission may want to provide input on.
Yeah, and I would fine tune that on the minimum operable segments. We are really expecting that if an MOS moves forward, it's part of a phasing strategy, and that MOS is an interim terminus, and that there's a date associated with the full build out of the system that was promised to voters. And so we would be looking in that DEIS comment letter to talk about what conditions would be appropriate if Smith Cove was an interim terminus.
And we have about 20. Is that the end of the?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you. We have about 20 minutes. The only thing I tack on is that through the legislation that increased staff funding levels, we'll also be able to fund a new planner position that will support Valerie's work, especially when some of the stations come. So we're very, very appreciative of the city team really advocating for that work to, if for no other reason, to give Valerie a little breathing room. So I really appreciate the work that we did together to help support the commission.
So I guess I'd ask first, we have about 20 minutes. Heard a lot today. First, are there any questions that any commissioners have for either Sound Transit or the city? Get into discussion.
I had a question.
Yeah,
maybe for Michael, actually, or you as chair. When the city has an obligation to write a letter, comments on DEIS, is the commission's role also part of that letter, or is it a separate letter?
I think it makes a lot of sense for our comments, your comments, to be embedded in the city's larger. We may express that in a separate document, but it's something that's bundled together along with the entire city family's work.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, I think.
I understand. Thanks.
I had a question for the Sound Transit team about the Graham station. I was curious about what the work with the Sound Transit art program is looking like for that. Has that conversation started?
That just started, yeah. We brought our person on pretty much starting in phase 3. So kind of identifying the areas where it could happen. And that's pretty much as far as it's gotten. They're on the team.
Cool. Is there crossover with some of the community outreach discussions at that site in relationship to the art planning?
Absolutely.
I also have a follow-up question on Graham. Will the funding for Graham be subject to the broader enterprise? So that is still, it's still subject to those decisions made by the board.
That's correct.
Okay.
I have a question, but if it's too big, we don't have to go there, but it's sort of a question for the Sound Transit team and maybe for you, Jason, since you touched on it. I was just curious what some of the main points of communication to the community and ridership about the enterprise initiative covers, like, and maybe that's too big of a question, but I was just curious, like high level, what those topics addressed.
I wish Alex and Cody were still here. I can speak to the project communication. So we've been maintaining regular communications with people who are interested in the project, talking about the potential cost saving measures and the design updates that may come from those efforts. I know all of the other capital projects are having similar conversations in the community, and as the board kind of advances through this work, and Alex touched on it, it's a huge effort. And it's going very quickly in order to keep these projects moving. And he talked about new board member communication. So as that strategy comes together, there will be an element of additional information coming out of the boardroom and an opportunity for the public to provide meaningful feedback on that as the board endeavors to make their decisions. They're kind of building it as they go, but it's certainly an important part of the coordination that will happen. It's just not fully baked in.
I have a question about the racial equity toolkit, not specifically about that, but about the fact that, and I don't know who can answer this question. Do y'all know if it's being used in the enterprise initiative happening? The results of that, the outcomes, the considerations, is that playing any role in all the cost saving measurements that City and Sound Transit are reviewing? Not really, but this would be, if Alex was here, this would really be a good Alex, but yeah, I'll say that our racial equity toolkits that we've been doing for the ST3 projects in the city of Seattle are very project focused and very place-based focused. I think a question I would ask to Alex is how are racial equity outcomes being measured into the evaluation criteria of the scenarios that are going to be coming forward this spring? And that's one of the focuses of the upcoming board retreat, is what evaluation criteria are they going to be using to look at those scenarios. And so I can't speak for the agency there, and I can't remember everything that came out of the last board retreat or the August framework that came out of the retreat, but how that spoke to racial equity.
I don't think so. I think if Alex or Cody would be the right people for this, so if that's something we do, just follow up with it.
Well, thank you.
Other questions the commissioners have? Eric, did you have a question? Don't want to forget about you online there.
Sorry. Yeah, I think I am all good for questions now. Thank you for the presentation, though.
Okay. Okay, so discussion, recommendations. I think per the questions we've gotten, I mean, I think the reason I asked about the criteria, I mean, so this is just a global comment, but Sound Transit has such tough decisions to make. And all of those decisions, as Michael sort of indicated, lead to other implications, right? I mean, they lead to if a station gets dropped or deferred, what does that mean for that community? Does it mean it's part of a subsequent long-range plan or a subsequent ballot measure? So I just think, not just for us, but really for transparency is just so huge here. And I just would just strongly urge the city and Sound Transit to be as clear as possible with very difficult decisions that are very technical. You know, I used to do this work. I mean, I can only imagine the kind of cost information and ridership information and other technical information that's being generated. But at the same time, these are huge decisions for these communities. And I just think it's just, and I think being really clear about the evaluation criteria right up front, this is what we're looking at, these are the things we're assessing, is really important to helping to frame and help the community understand. Obviously, the board will need that, but I think that the broader community really needs it too. So that's just one thing I wanted to say. Any other thoughts or questions?
This might have actually been a question, but I'll just give it a, so all right to have one more question.
Yeah, of course.
There's a lot of materials about PSRC and regional centers online. There's a lot of access to those individuals. There's a lot to, but and there is a kind of with the commission, our kind of a scope doesn't technically include kind of comprehensive planning issues per se. But at the same time, I'm just wondering, since you did mention it, Sarah, and I thought maybe just if there's again, we can all educate ourselves. There's plenty of information out there. But if there's sort of a high level version of how the kind of new certification and recertification or an attitude and approach of PSRC matters for kind of thinking about station areas, even indirectly station area planning per se. Is there something particularly different about their standard for what qualifies as a center or regional center and ways of thinking about it that has substantively changed that'd be helpful for us to understand? And again, we can learn more about it, but if there's a high level way to describe it, that'd be great.
There probably is a high level way to describe it. I'm not the right person to do that describing. I left PSRC right as they were doing that work. They did put in place new expectations for the types of plans that need to be in place in order to either receive or retain your center status. So previously centers had been designated, and then once they were designated, they stayed designated. And now there's sort of a procedure in place where you have to have an updated plan. You have to do, I think there's market analysis. If you are a center that's anticipating job or residential growth, you have to do some of that work in order to retain your status. And your status then, of course, helps you receive state and federal transportation dollars that are funneled through PSRC. What I would love, because I actually don't know the answer to this myself, and I think our whole team would benefit from this, is Katie, if maybe you and I can partner on bringing some of the center staff and our staff together to tackle that, so that we have a good understanding of that question, is how is station area planning being addressed through the center's plans? A lot of the center's plans are happening 15, 20 years before we're going to have a station there. And so, is it expected that there's going to be some sort of special treatment to those stations now, and then we'll still come forward 5 to 8 years before the station's open and do a full-blown station area plan for that area? Or are we doing some treatment through the center's planning that should help kind of set that community up for having service delivery at that station? So it's a great question, and I would love to do some follow-up on it with our staff teams and, plan to bring something back.
It looks like Katie has
Quarterly update, but if you have a better answer than the one I just garbled.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
I mean, I can add a little bit. So I think kind of what I said before was right. So the time horizons for those plans is 20 years. And there's still obviously a little bit, some questions around, the timeline for delivery and everything. So I think it's a case by case basis in terms of sort of the degree, the specificity that each one of those plans can really get to in terms of station area planning. So I think the approach we're sort of taking right now is assuming that, the plans that encompass areas that will likely get a new station, we're really thinking about, okay, well, what does it mean in general for those areas to have light rail? And thinking about how do you leverage that for growth, the degree of growth and density and mix of uses. Where we might not be getting super specific though about, oh, well, the station's going to be here, so these are the specific transportation projects we'd be looking at. So there's just a little bit of like, what's the conceptual approach? And then once we have more information about the timing of these things, we may be able to embed some more specificity around those stations. And if not, to Sarah's point, that's when we can come in the future and maybe do some more station area specific planning once we know a little bit more. So it's a little bit of a work in progress right now as we're learning more, but our team coordinates closely with the regional centers team. And so this is a conversation that's sort of ongoing with all of us, is how we account for that growth without necessarily having all the details yet.
Thanks.
So a comment for the city, with regard to the access work that you talked about. So it's great that you're clearly prioritizing, projects based on screening criteria and this is for the Sound Transit access funds. I presume you're doing the same thing with city funded projects, because I imagine with the new levy, there's a chunk of money for pedestrian project. I mean, in the past, it's just been like a fund for pedestrian master plan improvements, for bike master plan improvements. But it's really important that those city funds be leveraged to be prioritized, I think, for station openings. So Sarah mentioned some station openings are happening this year. So, but obviously other ones are further in fact. But I just hope that really thinking about those together. The city funding and the Sound Transit funding just being a package so that the right pedestrian, bike, and transit improvements can happen. So is that how you're kind of looking at that?
Yeah, so when we start out with a list of all the needs within that area, we get down to those funded by transit, but all is still on the list.
Right.
Are those future levy projects, grants can be important, getting future grants, be an important way of getting those other ones funded, so by the time the plan is actually fully implemented, hopefully as many of those projects that we start out with happening, just the ones that.
We had real, the timing was very serendipitous and that we had the Seattle Transportation Plan.
Right.
Timed the way it was with that full unconstrained list and then going into the levy and now the non-motorized access fund. So it gives us a nice starting place of a universe of projects and then really being able to tailor them to, what's in the levy and then what makes the most sense for those stations.
The stationary plan for like Graham or West Seattle, they will talk about all the needs for access from the station, not just this section. So that will provide a bigger picture.
And in the levy, we did take different approaches to West Seattle and Mallard, and at West Seattle, we knew we could be in the process of doing the non-motorized access fund allowance determination. So we had specific projects that we had ready to go in that levy. Ballard is really going to be in the planning horizon for the next levy. And so what you see in the levy is a lot more conceptual.
Other comments that any commissioners have or questions? So I think for our work ahead, this is a good slide. I mean, we'll to raise question, we'll be engaging on the DEIS, I imagine, this spring. Just so that's going to be a chunk of work. And then our next station reviews come, it sounds like later this year, potentially towards the end of this year, and then early next year. And that's potentially, I mean, it's West Seattle, 30%, it's Graham. And then Ballard PE is just to be determined still, right? It's looking like later in 2027, I would imagine, for that. Is that fair?
I was thinking it could still be early 2027.
It could be early 2027.
Jared, do you have any sense?
Sorry, I would respond to that.
The PE pre-permitting reviews for Ballard, early 2027.
That's a good Sound Transit question because they need to reach.
Right, I
PE
understand.
at that point. And right now, I think it's on your schedule for, you want to share, Gavin?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to the DEIS.
Yes.
And so we'll have more clarity once we.
Yeah. But for now, this is as good a sort of a benchmark for scheduling as we have. Okay, understand. Michael, did you?
Sarah knows this, and maybe not everyone knows this as well, that we had established a subcommittee of the commissioners to really be the primary advocates for what the commission wants to see, in particular with these presentations. I think what we've done in the past, I think has worked quite well, is the subcommittee will convene, tease out any issues that we've seen today, as well as maybe anything that was additive based upon comments. And then about a month in advance, we'll meet with Sarah and then by extension, probably Jason and other members. Justin, to look at, well, what does the next quarterly presentation look like? Not only based upon what we've heard today, but any emerging issues that come up. That might be the BLE Yeah, the EIS, but whatever that might be, I think these quarterly updates serve well just to make sure the commission is up to speed, but starting to think about what this year looks like, and it's super helpful. Anything else before we transition to our 10:30?
As part of that, which I kind of already touched on the question about with the enterprise effort, when we are getting further presentations, it would be great to have in more detail, about for the community outreach and messaging around enterprise and what, if there is feedback that's being integrated in those decisions that you will be presenting to us in the future.
Can I just add to that,
Yeah.
just mention to the commissioners that it can be really helpful to tune into the board meetings or listen to the recordings, because that is where a lot of this conversation is happening. And so to the extent you have time and headspace, I would encourage you to try to follow it there. And then we can also bring information.
Thanks, Julie. Thank you.
Well, I think it's really helpful just on that point, Julie, to know, going back to the original presentation, like what the milestones are for not only the board decision on the enterprise initiative, but then that affects the update of the long range plan, update of the system plan. So that, I mean, it's a busy year. That's a lot of work. I mean, those system plans alone take a long time to pull together, or at least they have in the past. So that's a big chunk of work for the agency in 2026.
That's why Alex had to run the camera.
Yeah. Thanks again,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you.
Really appreciate the conversation. Hey. Yeah.
She's being great.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about that. Can you hang there for a couple of minutes?
I tried.
Well,
But then I can't.
we could have.
Oh, you have that.
But let's talk about it.
Yeah.
If
But they have signs
and there was a belief. There was concern about. I said she's gonna be. I wasn't.
Yeah, she has.
We are.
You know, but that's why I was like.
So I'm happy to do that. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. I'm more than.
So it's like, I'm not way less.
Yeah.
Because my work is.
Sure.
So.
And
Anyway.
you know, Cody used to work on the counter, and he knows that. And I think that he may have a better controversial with his role. He may not necessarily have the same.
Right, yeah.
There's always a little bit about.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Oh, yeah.
As I noticed.
Looks.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I was
All the
like,
way through. Yeah. Like a whole.
especially,
I believe capturing. Highlighted from the power.
especially at weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, like not like a real, because
They're the ones.
like when you give over all those spaces. Tourism, which they need. Part of the city. Well, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Brian? I don't think we've ever met in person.
You,
so
Michael?
it's nice to see
How you doing?
something larger than this.
Yeah.
And is it Christina?
Hi, yes.
It is Christina. Hi.
Yes.
Yeah, nice to actually
Yeah.
not see you at this time.
How's it going?
How are you?
One of Deb's colleagues, Shane, is on and will be sharing. And if anything happens, I am here and I can also.
And Shane's logged into the team meeting.
And Shane can go ahead and share their screen.
Oh, okay.
Because what we'll do is we'll do a round of introductions and then just a quick tee up about what we're doing today.
I don't know if you can hear us, Shane, if you wanna load the presentation.
You can go ahead and load up your presentation.
Okay.
Just share your
sounds good.
screen.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, Shane. Hello.
Hi, good morning, folks. Sorry, I wasn't able to join in person today. Have a little full-term human being in my belly, so it's a little less mobile than I'd like. But I'm glad to be able to join still and help answer some questions on the project. Okay.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
She did. I didn't know if you sent them to the commission. Did you? Okay. We will go ahead and get started then. I want to welcome just for the recording, I want to welcome everybody to the 10:30 meeting of the commission. We're conducting what we call a pre-petition review of a proposal to vacate a segment of a right-of-way in the South Park neighborhood, South Chicago Street. The vacation would allow the full realization of a significant capital project for Seattle Public Utilities, a water quality facility along the Duwamish. It's a pre-petition review. They have not submitted their petition to vacate that segment of South Chicago. After that petition is submitted and the formal review begins, the commission will have two different phases of their review: public trust, looking at the implications of the loss of the right-of-way, and then public benefit, looking at a public benefit package designed to offset the loss of the right-of-way. And in addition to comments on the pre-petition comments, which is high-level comments about your proposal, the commission will also provide some general comments about the capital facility and some of the larger programmatic moves that you're making today, or making in a proposal. Shireen, why don't you kick us off with introductions? We do have a commission member who's attending online today as well. Shireen?
Thank you for being here. I'm Shireen Masudi and at-large commissioner. I'll be taking actions like
Hi, I'm Kate Clark. I'm the art commissioner.
Zubin Rao, Architecture Commissioner.
Ray Gastel, Planning Commissioner. Kevin O'Neill, Transportation Planning Commissioner and Chair.
Judy Boger, Landscape Architect Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Eric, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name's Eric Lipio and I'm the Get Engaged Commissioner.
Thanks, Eric. Brian, do you want to lead us off with introduction to the team?
Sure. Thanks for having us, everyone. My name is Brian Michelson. I work with Seattle Public Utilities and drainage and wastewater line of business. I'm a capital portfolio manager. Much of my portfolio exists in the South Park neighborhood. We're here today, as Michael noted, to talk about the South Park water quality facility in the context of street vacation we'll be going for, and provide the greater context for the project. Pass it to my colleague, Christine.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Capoy. I also work at Seattle Public Utilities, and I am a project manager working on this project as well with Brian. I'll pass it to Deb.
Yeah, I'm Deb Gunther. We're really pleased to be working with Seattle Public Utilities. I'm a partner at Methuen and a landscape architect. And I'm here with my colleague Shane, who's online. And Shane, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Shane Wong O'Brien. I'm a landscape architect and designer on this project at Methuen, working with the SPU team and Deb here.
Thanks, Shane. Could you introduce yourself as well?
I'm Sarah Ortiz. I'm with the distribution program with SDOT. Beverly Bark, I think she's currently at transition. So
Then my name is Kumar Kari. I manage the Shoreline Students Program and Kempton Kenyon, I believe is the other street in my program scope. So I was just listening in on this project, and I also worked on the 8th Avenue project, or 7th Avenue, I should say, project that recently went in just a block away from there. So thanks.
And I realize Jeremy is online from Office of Arts and Culture.
Oh, okay.
And also our planning artist, Deborah. Jeremy and Deborah, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hey folks, Jeremy Beliveau, project manager for Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, Public Art Division. I'm working with artist Deborah Ashheim on the planning portion of this project. And I'll pass it off to you, Deborah.
Hi, I'm Deborah Ashheim. I'm the planning artist. So I've been doing mostly a lot of community engagement since this summer. And then we're working on design, making a plan and then hiring artists to for the new park or the new public benefit part of the water quality facility. And in the short term, we're looking to commission a bunch of artists to do temporary artworks for the construction fencing to ameliorate that.
I think we've got a half an hour presentation from you, and then we're here until about noon. So take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you, Brian and Christina. And what we're gonna share today, if you want to go to the next slide, is that this context of providing a little site context, sharing more of the co-design process that Deborah was beginning to share, and then the street vacation, really high level, sort of a beginning introduction to that public trust analysis that we'll be going into more detail when we come back with the full application, and then the street, some of the public benefits we're starting to identify. We are at concept design, and we are just starting 30% design and engineering on the project. So next slide. So this gives you a sense of the project location. So we're on the Duwamish River. We're at the end of 8th Avenues, 8th Street, 8th Avenue. And so down the center of South Park is to the left on the slide. We're at Kenyon, and you see the diagonal trees canopy on the lower left. That's Dallas Avenue. So that leads right along to the South Park Plaza, if you're familiar with that park. And we're between the Duwamish Waterway Park and Tattahoochee Park, which is at that north end of 8th. One of the great things about this project is it was an early project that came into as Shape Our Waters was being formed, the program that Seattle Public Utilities runs that looks at how we invest our infrastructure dollars to really have multiple benefits. So it's always been the concept that the water quality facility doesn't need the whole site. And so the other part of the site can be co-designed with the community and really address those multiple benefits. So on the next slide, north is up. So this kind of zooms in on where on the site itself. That's 8th on the left and Kenyon on the south edge. The Duwamish River, the sort of diagrammatic triangle in the lower right is basically suggesting that breakdown. Like there's a certain amount of the site which will be water quality facility, and then the yellow remaining kind of ballpark in terms of the proportions is the community benefit. So one of the things that Brian's been working really hard on is, which is a great opportunity, is the connection in the inset in the upper right, where the bend in the road on the right side of Kenyon Street wraps around. There's an opportunity to connect the sidewalk and make a continuous shoreline walk from Duwamish Waterway Park all the way to Chattahoochee Park. And you'll see the street vacation at the end of South Chicago Street is in the darker red. So it doesn't connect all the way. It's not a street end that's a shoreline street end. It's a piece of the right of way that ends within the site. So on the next slide, you'll see the water quality facility goals. So one of the great things about this water quality facility, Kennedy Jenks is the engineer. They were the SPU and Kennedy Jenks worked together to this will be a bioretention kind of solution for water quality. So there won't be any significant buildings on the site. So there's actually going to be quite a ability to kind of integrate that bioretention with the community benefit area, the shoreline park. So some of the goals there are to remove pollutants from the stormwater before it gets to the Duwamish River, cleaning up and removing the contaminants. So that's already begun. The gypsum pile, if you're familiar with it, isn't there anymore. So that's pretty exciting. Has a really direct health impacts. And then some of the multiple benefits that kind of represent that Shape Our Waters program are that this site can contribute to that network of shoreline natural areas, that we can explore partnerships and engagement to deepen the community involvement and really shape the experience of this site. And then the community guided project design goals on the next slide. These are the design goals that came out of the community engagement process. So, have been informed by the art planning work that Deborah will speak to, and the local students that will share, that we worked with in the Duwamish Valley Youth Corps program and the Duwamish Valley Sustainability Association. So the top two, I'll just note that you're going to hear this a lot during this presentation, but it was very surprisingly consistent. Every community event that we went to came back with a focus on short salmon habitat as a number one goal, and also the need for community space, which is really tight in South Park. And there are over 20 local organizations, and they need more space to have their meetings. And there's also a desire to have flexible outdoor space to have more events and gathering. And the river, this is a very special location. The Duwamish River is a really historic piece of how Seattle evolved. Obviously really important to the Coast Salish people, and a place of many longhouses in the past. And the tidal marsh and the mud flats we now know are super valuable, really important carbon sequestration locations. And so this site is really an example of moving from a fully industrial site to a mix of industrial use and natural habitat. And we know also that South Park is a high priority in the city in terms of it's an environmental justice community that has endured the Superfund cleanups which is still ongoing. And a lot of the residents continue to experience a lot of displacement risk. So in terms of climate resilience, the site is the triangle there in the middle with the red star. So this part of the Duwamish River is still tidal, so it experiences the impacts of sea level rise. And these sites, the concept of climate resilience from the city perspective is that there's a series of public properties along this edge that really can contribute to that climate resilience. And it can anchor the flood management infrastructure and also deliver those multiple benefits we've been talking about. So there are three kind of areas. There's the water quality facility that can do that. There's also the Duwamish Waterway Park and the expansion of that park. And then the three stars in the upper left you can see are interspersed with the circles that are yellow dash circles. Those are points of inundation where that flooding comes in. Our site is not one of those points of inundation. So our site it's immediately adjacent on 8th and that to Hootsuite Park, but not our site specifically. But the drainage project is also, looking at how to address those low bank areas along the river where that inundation is occurring. So we know from the 2022 king tides that this area floods, but our site is actually higher than a lot of that flooding, and so we're looking at raising the site just slightly in order to be at the 2050 mean high water line of 14.2 plus 2 feet of freeboard. So our site is going up to 16.2 ultimately, but that is about, depending on where you are on the site, it's 1 to 3 feet of fill. So the streets are higher as well. So that's an interesting thing, is it's not actually creating a lot of change in topography, I guess, is what the takeaway is.
Is that the difference between the green overlay and the purple overlay in that last perspective?
Yeah, I believe the purple is where flooding is occurring and the 2050 flooding is occurring. I think that's right. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
The green area is higher. That's a different.
Well, actually, the green area is just designating the sites, so it's not actually referring to elevation. So the Duwamish Waterway Park is lower than our site, for example. But yeah, the purple is not showing flooding in those areas. Okay, so coming back to the site again, just to share elevations for a little more context. So again, Kenyon is on the south side, and we're going to start with elevations along 8th on the west side of the site. So this is looking toward the site, which is indicated in pink along 8th. So the river is on the left, Kenyon Street is on the right. The crane is going to be removed. If you just can kind of vaguely see that on the left. The right of way is indicated with the hatch dimension lines there in the middle. The white area is an existing building that's an out parcel, so that'll be remaining. And then the building on the corner down near Kenyon is potentially something that could be adaptively reused for community space. So that's an existing building that may or may not remain. And then looking the other way, we have the Duwamish Trail on the other side of the street, which is an 11-foot wide multi-use path, but it ends at Kenyon. So it doesn't have the continuation of that is one of the opportunities that this site brings. And then you can also see Chicago Street that is right in the middle. On the right-hand side, pretty much everything is industrial. So it's got a very industrial feel. On the left, it's very residential. And this is obviously a characteristic of South Park, but it's very distinct in this location, this mix of residential and industrial. And then moving on to Kenyon, the top two elevations. So again, the site is in pink. 8th Avenue is on the left. The wraparound, you can kind of see in the little thumbnail that the Kenyon wraps around and turns into 10th, and that's on the right-hand side of this elevation. And then in the turning around and looking the other way is primarily a residential series of residential buildings. And then we wanted to include 10th Avenue, what happens along 10th, because we think it's a significant, that it's a very tree-lined street right across from the park. And actually turns into Dallas, which is also a tree-lined street that really takes you down into the center of South Park. And so we wanted to emphasize that because we think Kenyon has a real potential to kind of bridge that gap between the Duwamish Trail and this really, continuing this great experience that's on 10th. So we'll go to the community engagement. One of the great things about this process with the Racial Equity Toolkit is SPU noted that the community is really fatigued. There have been a lot of capital projects in South Park over the last 5 years. So we actually spent a lot of time before we entered into these youth workshops doing a community audit so that we had a good baseline of understanding what are the comments that have already been made in the community throughout those other 5 years of capital projects. And then SPU was invited by the Duwamish Valley Community Coalition to participate in their Youth Corps program, which is a youth development program that focuses on environmental education, environmental justice, and job skills. So we held 4 co-design workshops about this site with each of the groups, and we shared what we learned about the natural and cultural history of the neighborhood, the Duwamish River, how city departments like SPU work together, how the decisions get made. And in exchange, the youth shared how they experience the neighborhood, what kinds of activities they'd like to see on the site. And they ultimately developed site plans to represent their ideas, and they actually shared them back to their families and the community during a graduation ceremony at the end of the program. So you can see on the next slide some of the ideas that they came up with. Some of the main takeaways were the importance of Kenyon, and they really noticed right off the bat that they don't like walking down 8th because it's heavier freight, it's more traffic volume. They noticed right away that Kenyon leads right to the river, so having a view of the river was important to them. And then you can see that the shoreline walk was a consistent theme, and then having a lot of places to look out over the river was a consistent theme. And at this stage, the students were looking at different groups had different locations of the water quality facility on the site. So that was part of the exploration at this early stage. And then out of those that site plan foundation came these site plan options that were shared with the community. And you can see in the lower right, this is the plan that had the greater focus on habitat area and a focus on Kenyon was the plan that emerged in the community, in the broader community outreach as a preferred plan. So this was the engagement that happened in the spring of 2025. It was both an online survey and an in-person open house at the community hub. And you can see in the lower right, just very small, but that those green dots represent that habitat option out of the 4 options. We also got a lot of really great commentary on the stickies that kind of give nuance to what those dots really represent. And then we asked specifically about 4 program areas. Is there a preference for green space on the far left? Is there a preference for community space, which is the orange in the second, workforce development in the red, and then habitat on the right. So again, community space and habitat kept emerging to the top. And then the site plan options that came out of that really developed the water quality facility, moved to the north end of the site consistently because of the desire to focus on Kenyon. And there is a existing dock on the north end that SPU will continue to rent out and so lease out. And so consolidating the industrial uses adjacent to each other was also a desire. And then in the phase 2 engagement in taking those ideas out to the Sopa Supa summer event, we did surveys with folks at that event in exchange for some restaurant coupons. So we actually got a high level of participation in those surveys. And again, the option that had the greatest space for salmon habitat and expansion of Kenyon was heavily favored in the both the conversations and the just the straight out kind of dot voting. So Deborah's going to share more detail about the range of community engagement that she's heard from the broader community.
Hi. So in my job as the planning artist, one thing I am able to do, because I have the resources, is to really go deep into conversations with people and to meet with them at their homes and their businesses and visit with them other places and also to connect with some people maybe that wouldn't come to meetings or don't fill out surveys. So for example, Jeremy and I went up to Suquamish to meet with representatives of the Suquamish Cultural Council to find out their feelings because they have a treaty involvement with the river, and I did a lot of things with Duwamish Valley Conservation Corps, but I also did workshops once a month. I went to South Park once a week, 1 week of the month, every month for 4 months. And so I did workshops with Spanish speaking seniors. I visited with local neighbors in their homes. We did workshops at the library and also to engage a broader community speaking many languages that are spoken in South Park. I worked with Cultivate South Park because there's a really robust network of youth groups and everybody, and there were 3 points I really wanted to make. One was, I just want to reiterate, even though you've heard it a lot, how impressive it is in this community that's rather underserved, that people put environmental stewardship and salmon habitat first consistently. If we were making drawings, they made drawings of the salmon, and we've done so much community engagement that we've gotten such a clear message that it seemed really an issue of respect to make sure that that's the first priority. But the second thing that people said that came up a lot, I did a lot of sort of focus groups with teenagers and with lots of other people, little pizza dinners and stuff, to ask them what makes a park succeed, what makes a park fail, why would you go to a public space and take advantage of the public benefit? And the number one thing I heard was safety. And so I'm going to, well, I'll get back to this in a second, but that was that a space is accessible, that it feels like it would be safe from getting hit by cars. There is some crime in South Park, so safe as a safe place to be with other people or just by yourself, and safe emotionally, like feeling connected to a network of places and having good visibility so that you don't feel nervous in the space. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention too was the other thing that came up again and again and again is South Park is amazing because it has an incredibly robust network of grassroots environmental justice and fair housing and immigrant rights and other advocacy groups. And they don't have enough places to meet. They have the Duwamish River Hub, which is run by the port, but it costs money. You have to reserve it in advance, and it has pretty specific guidelines for reserving it. So it would be an amazing community benefit in the plan that is our preferred plan, that we can renovate an existing building so that there's more space for workshops, for youth career development, for these groups to meet, for art workshops. But I just wanted to, if we can go to the next slide, I just want to really highlight how much Chicago is like the cutoff. So if you look at the project site and you look at Chicago Street, literally if you go south, it's neighborhoods, it's cute, people have gardens, there's the people that live right across the street from the park have galvanized tubs with plants growing in them and bistro lights. If you go a little bit further down 10th Avenue to like around 10th and Southern, there's There's a building where several nonprofits are. The Senior Center is there, the Duwamish Valley Youth Corps, and Via Communitaria, which works on equity issues for the disadvantaged people in the community. If you walk along the river near the little panhandle stub of our park, there's the between the Duwamish River Park and the water quality facility is the main place that you can put kayaks into the river. And there are several nonprofit groups that lead environmental tours to help make people aware of the Superfund history and all of the efforts being done to clean up the site. And it's just very, very connected. You know, there's bus stops, so there and it's easy to make the transition from all of the business establishments on 14th Street at Cloverdale and the park. But if you look north and you cross Chicago, you get into what's actually really a little bit of like a scary place. Like I've been with Cultivate Youth Summer Internship, and we were waiting for a bus in that area, and it was a sunny day in the summer, and it still was very intimidating to be somewhere so isolated and with so few resources. So I can't imagine on a dark afternoon or in a rainy day that anybody would travel up there. So the thing that I heard more than anything else from people is that, you know, we really are excited about this, but we really need it to be within sort of like the social network of all of the amenities of South Park and the residential area for people to use it. They're not going to travel past a big industrial building through a scary, you know, often abandoned feeling neighborhood where you're lucky if you see a forklift. So those are my takeaways from the community, and they're really excited about it, and I really hope we can honor their vision.
Thank you, Deborah.
I'll hand it back.
Terrific, thank you. So this is where the site plan is today, the concept plan, and you can see the off-channel habitat. The dark light green is the bioretention piece. So there's an integration between the shoreline walk and that bioretention facility and the stormwater and the water quality facility. And then the lower left is the community plaza and community building. So in the next slide, you'll see where the street vacation right away kind of falls within that. And then we're just going to touch on the public trust analysis, just a quick sentence on each of the 9 kind of criteria. So the first one is, well, first I wanted to just mention the existing conditions. So this is looking east on the right-of-way itself. So it's actually been gated for quite some time and is not usable. It has not been accessible to the public. It's on has been on a long-term lease with storage of the tenant who's not there anymore. And it doesn't, as I mentioned, it doesn't connect to the water. It's just a piece of the right-of-way there. And then this is the site plan comparison between the preferred site plan on the left and the no street vacation site plan on the right, if the water quality facility was in another, in this other location to the south. And in the next one, one of the first public trust kind of questions is the impact on circulation and access. We're just a block south of us on 8th is our really important bus stops that serve, that is one of the major bus service areas on in South Park. So a really important circulation connection there. But the main takeaway here is that the street vacation will allow fewer curb cuts along both street edges. And then in terms of utilities, there's not a lot of change between the street vacation or the no vacation option. SPU owns the water main on South Chicago, and the water service line is inactive at this portion of the water main. And then in terms of free speech and assembly, the street vacation allows for the community gathering space to be located in the most visible and inviting street corner that is higher level of residential, as Deborah mentioned, and closer to the bus stops. Historically, that was actually a village center because there used to be a bridge that went over to Georgetown, and there were actually it was a bit of a village center that right there at 8th and Kenyon. And then open space and light and air. The street vacation allows for more robust park spaces and pathway experiences, as you can kind of see in the darker orange. And then in terms of views, the street vacation allows the water quality facility fence to sit further away from the street. So the blue dashed lines there, and then improving the views for neighboring properties and creating more varied views along the Riverwalk. And then in terms of land use and urban form, street vacation creates a more park-like edge that fits into the residential neighborhoods. You can kind of see those residential buildings in blue. And then in summary, the street vacation allows for fewer curb cuts, a more continuous sidewalk on 8, public open space at the street corner, green frontage along Kenyon, and then more dynamic and spacious Riverwalk. So in the following slides, we'll just touch on, again, the public benefits of street vacation. This is the preferred site plan on the next slide and the alternative site plan side by side. And then if we just highlight the public benefits here, the red is the shoreline walk, the gray is the water quality facility, the green is the open space and the bioretention area, and the blue is the shoreline and shoreline restoration area. So some of the three key benefits that we wanted to highlight are that the street vacation allows for more complete and connected streetscape experiences, that we are able to centrally locate the community space, and we're able to create a wider site that allows for expanded shoreline habitat and expanded habitat park space. So this is a sketch of Kenyon looking east, and on the next slide, you'll see this is a minor industrial access street topology. And so we're providing the 6-foot sidewalk, but then we're also proposing to add 4 more feet to widen the sidewalk into the property. And then the habitat park will be adjacent to that. So that's the proposed section at the bottom. And then on 8th Avenue, we have the required 6-foot sidewalk, but then we're also proposing to set the fence back 10 feet to create more vegetated space along that street experience, and that pedestrian experience, to help that pedestrian experience be more shaded. And then the key benefit number 2 is the centrally located community space. So that's the goal with the white building, potential adaptive reuse of that building. And you can see in green the Duwamish Trail that wraps around from Portland to avenues to 8th Avenue. And then Kenyon is the dashed pink line that has an opportunity to really become a much more generous pedestrian street, but also reinforcing that community space on the corner close to the bus lines. The bus stops are located in those pins just to the south of the site. And then the third one is that expanded shoreline habitat restoration. So we were able to create more terraces, and the peninsula that protects the juvenile salmon, gives them more of a place to stop as they're migrating. So there's actually one of these off-channel habitats right across the river at the Boeing site. And so, yeah, it's really similar to that. And it's been shown to be one of the more effective salmon habitat areas. So anything that we would do along the shoreline in terms of vegetation would be helpful. But this is an option that provides more salmon habitat. So just in terms of next steps, and we'll wrap up here, is the 3 planning tracks on this schedule. The top one is the contaminated site cleanup, which will be removing polluted soil and groundwater. The middle one shows planning for the water quality facility itself, including the roughing filters and the bioretention cells. And then the last track is the site planning for the community investment space. So we're aiming to start the 30% design here really shortly in the next month or so. And then construction would start in 2029. And the plan is for the facility to be operational by the end of 2030 or early 2031. So when we have the 30% design and engineering package, then we can submit our application for the street vacation conversation, and that will probably be near the end of this year. And then Deborah mentioned the ongoing community engagement, the public art plan, and then the temporary artwork during construction, which we're super excited about. So thank you. We look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Deb.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any members of the public attending today. If there is a member of the public who is attending that I'm not able to see right now, we provide up to 2 minutes for a public comment per person. If you could if you are a member of the public and you are attending and you want to provide up to 2 minutes of comment, please raise your hand online and we'll recognize you. We do have a representative from SDC, but I wanted to make sure that a member of the public, if they did want to provide comment, could do so. Sarah, I know Beverly would normally be here today, but she's at Transportation Committee. We got an email from Beverly Barnett about the initial review. Is there anything you wanted to say on her behalf, or?
I think the only suggestion I had met with Brian and Lindy, I think the only comment that would have made in that moment was to try for documentation on the obligations, and it seemed like you guys have included. It's that's the only additional comments that I have on behalf of her. Thank you.
And I'm happy to forward. She sent an email. I'm happy to forward this on, and I think not surprisingly, she was like many of us who've been involved in this, seeing this early, very impressed with the work that we've seen today. Very, very thoughtful. The case is very, very clear about why you need. The process may not align with the clarity of your proposal, but the proposal is very, very clear, and I think very thoughtful in terms of what it is that you need to accomplish and how you're engaging with the public. She didn't have any particular red flags for the commission today. I think as we get into the more depth in the review after you actually submit your petition, she may have additional comments, but right now there was nothing substantive.
With that, I would like to open it for questions. Again, we've been very impressed with the level of efforts and quality of community engagement you guys have done. So thank you very much for that. Any questions?
I have a question, and thanks so much for the presentation. And it was really interesting to hear about the audit that you did in advance of the community outreach. That's a huge part of the work. Wanted to recognize that your efforts. And Deborah, really interesting to hear about your work. And I had a couple questions in terms of community outreach. Did you all have contact with the Duwamish tribe and feedback from them in these efforts?
Yeah, Jeremy and I met with the Duwamish Longhouse community, and we reached out and we encouraged artists that are part of that community to get on the pre-qualified roster so they can be considered for some of the art opportunities. And we've been doing as much outreach as we could. So the only ones we're still, I think, waiting to hear back from is Muckleshoot, if I'm correct, Jeremy. But yeah, we were invited up to Suquamish, so we went up there, and yeah, we're continuing to try to be as available to everybody as we can.
Cool. Thank you. And I was curious too, I know we'll hear more about it in the next steps, but Deborah, it seems like you'll be shifting from community engagement to then identifying art opportunities for this project. Is that right?
Once we get to the 30% design, I think we'll have a better sense of where the most appropriate spaces are and to start making a plan. And so there's basically two kinds of opportunities. There's going to be temporary projects, which will, I think, rotate, and they'll be on the fencing so that it will be lively and it will build interest for the site, and it will make it nice for the neighborhood for now. Those are going to be local artists only, and they're going to be smaller commissions, but we see them as a great public art equity opportunity because they're going to be, so we did a lot of outreach to get new people on the roster, and we reopened it for like a midterm review so that we could cast a wider net and hopefully give people, particularly like maybe from South Seattle or that have a connection to South Park, to give them maybe their first public art opportunity. So those will not require any prior public art experience. And then for the larger, more long-term projects that will be inside the park, some of it will depend on what happens. If we get to keep that building, then we'll have some great wall space that we can consider. But over the holiday period, I went through I think 600 people on the pre-qualified roster, and particularly noted people whose work is about water, is about environmental issues, is about the diverse cultures of South Park, or about the area history. And so right now I'm developing themes more than a specific plan, but once we have the design for the park, those will get translated into particular opportunities, and we'll start inviting artists to get some shortlists going. But it's a sort of a long process.
Nice. Thanks for the info. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking.
Is there it's kind of implied, but what is the catchment area or for the stormwater?
240 acres.
So because it was on this side of the north-south highway. Okay. 240 acres. Thank you.
Yeah, it actually crosses the highway.
It does.
There's several basins within the basin. There's an upper, which is to the west, and then a mid, and then the lower is where everything sort of ends up. And as Deborah kind of mentioned, we have a multi-pronged CIP strategy to try to get the water to stop ponding on the surface. So that's the drainage project, get the water a place to go. And then it goes to the pump station, which because it's a tidal river, sometimes the outfall is covered and we don't want the system to get backed up. And so the pump station actually gravity flows or forces the water back out. And then the third prong is this water quality. So we don't want to be pumping dirty water consistently back into a site that's being cleaned up. And so we're going to be cleaning up 240 acres of stormwater coming down through the basin.
And you're using about 30% of the site? Is that about right? But the acreage changes in this plan because you're losing land.
It'll continue to a little. Yeah, it's about 2/3 for the water quality facility, and then about a third. It's about a 3-acre site, so 2 acres versus an acre per community, per community.
Okay. All right. And then the other question, maybe you were all clear about it, but is there I don't quite understand whether there's new construction or what the actual community facility that, in the sense of you go inside and have a meeting there. Is it a proposed building? Is it an adaptive reuse? You may have been clear. I'm sorry.
It's a adaptive reuse of a existing building that has been used as the office space for the gypsum facility.
Yeah. But thank you.
So it could be adapted for to be reused as a community space.
And is there a ballpark sense of, is that 1,000 square feet or bigger than the hub?
It's way bigger than it looks from the outside.
1,500 square feet.
Very much bigger than the hub. There's maybe 6 or 7 good sized meeting rooms inside.
But yeah. Okay. Good.
And yeah, the idea there is to repurpose, adaptively repurpose an existing building, because we as a utility are sort of constrained in how we can spend ratepayer funds. And so there's a fundraising piece here that if we had a partner that was willing to come in and help raise money, design, bid, construct a new building, that would be preferable, obviously, but we all know how expensive that can be. So we're trying to think creatively. Credit to Christina for sort of raising this of like, if this structure is, sound and we can retrofit it, that would be a lot cheaper. And it would allow folks to get in there sooner, given the need for meeting space indoors, South Park. And there's that right now. And then one other thing to mention is there's an existing warehouse kind of closer to the water that was separate from the gypsum facility, but we're currently renting that out to Northwest Maritime River Access Power Program. And that's the folks that Deb mentioned, kind of take folks out on kayaks and talk about environmental education, and the history of the river, and do actual cleanups and water quality monitoring. So we're trying to reuse the space now as much as we can, and sort of integrate that into, our deconstruction process, and try to maintain budget schedule while meeting community needs now.
Is the goal to keep RAP on that site for the interim or?
TBD.
Yeah, TBD.
We have them there. We extended to the end of June. We're doing just like a lease, a short-term lease, and then we're going to try to figure out ways for them to keep their watercraft closer to the river.
I know they're excited to be there.
Yeah. Yes. They do great work.
I understand. Yeah. Okay.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I noticed there was a little piece that said, property not owned by SPU, that little, what's that little building?
It's funny, we were there just yesterday. You want to look up?
Sure. So this 3-acre site had multiple property owners, and SPU has been in the process of acquiring the 6 or 7 parcels that make up this property and site. And that particular parcel had a separate owner and a long-term lease associated with it. And so we were not able to acquire it at the same time that we acquired the other parcels surrounding it. But we are still interested in buying it, and it looks like the tenants are in the process of moving out. So we're going to restart those conversations to see if we can purchase it.
And the potential building for reuse is this little brick one, has like a little brick wainscoting.
Yes.
Looks almost like a little house kind of.
Yeah.
It was a house.
house,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's been repurposed many times in its history.
There's some big pine trees right on the corner there.
Okay, and then my only other question, so you said 8th and Kenyon are kind of where people are expected to be, right?
Mhm.
And Chicago is the kind of tough street, so you're sort of intentionally, like if you're coming down Chicago, that's kind of the treatment yard, and there's sort of no way in there because you're not expecting people to be coming down Chicago.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
That's it.
So two quick. One, just a process question. So I think I heard you say you're going to probably be submitting the application later this year so we would be expected to get the public trust early next year,
I think
likely.
so,
Okay. And then second, so I've been to that Shoreline Street End Park at the end of 8th, which is a cool little park. Are you touching that at all? I mean, obviously this project enhances that because it's a green connection to it, but that physical space, are you planning to do anything there or not so much?
No, our project boundary does not
Yeah.
extend into that existing park.
Okay.
So we'd be connecting to the sidewalk.
Right. Yeah.
That would be.
There'd just be a sidewalk connection, but no other.
Yeah.
Okay.
That park is owned by the port of Seattle.
Yep.
Yeah. And
It's
was,
that right of way, most of it,
Mhm.
the port owns the waterward right portion of it, yeah.
yeah.
I think that's the only question I had. Thanks.
Oh, God.
I have a couple follow-up questions. So just to kind of piggyback on the community building question. So is that I think it's great and that will make it so much more robust. I think bringing more activity to that site because it is an issue of hiding holes and there's kind of some parking if you want to use the space. So is there funding for that community building or are you kind of asserting that maybe not, but it would be a lot more attainable if you reuse the building in lieu of a new project?
Yes. We are not assuming that SPU will operate or maintain or make improvements to the building. We are in conversations with a group called Northwest Maritime, who are in partnership with the Highline School District, the Maritime High School report, in really reviving and bringing experiential learning experiences sort of like to the water in an area that is really economically important for South Park, right? The maritime industry. And so they have expressed interest. They're looking to expand, like many others. They are looking for space in which to operate and educate. And so they primarily have been folks, in addition to, Duwamish River Community Coalition and others that are community-based organizations that we've been engaged with in potentially partnering on improvements over time. They're doing their due diligence now, committing to that.
That's on the same. bit, so. Other question was just about, you kind of talked about the north, and then I just don't know if that's the state end name part. Say it again.
Tallahassee.
Okay.
Or
but the-
Gear Park.
Yeah.
It's often called.
Yeah. I see that. So then to the south, you're connecting to Duwamish Waterway Park, which is relatively new. And then there's an expansion there. Can you just, kind of talk about the expansion a little bit and then how you're connecting?
Yeah, there's a Unity Electric site that OPCD, you may want to talk more detail. Okay, go ahead.
So Duwamish Waterway Park is maintained by the Parks Department. They purchased what is variously referred to as Unity Electric. It's a porta potty storage company adjacent to the park, including a large building. They purchased that a couple years ago and are leasing it out to that company. And eventually they will develop it when they have budget to develop it. This is how parks budgets for the capital projects. And so we have been engaged with them and various community groups to try to, given our schedule and given their schedule, figure out like complementary uses. What is the plan for their site versus our site? They're going to expand it. Right now, the likelihood is that it will just be more sort of parkland. But they are fielding and engaging in the same types of conversations thematically that we are around, can we use the building now? Can we keep, right? Like that space is needed now. What does that look like? And so it will probably be more park eventually, but they're not going to start building or even really designing until when this project will sort of be done. Right. And that's just sort of the reality set that we're into. But we are, Parks is actively engaged in this. They know this is a priority site. And one other thing, to give SDOT some credit, the new transportation levy, they are looking to put sidewalks in a lot of neighborhoods that need them. And there's a sidewalk that connects Duwamish Waterway Park on the opposite side to Kenyon, but not on the water side. And so we've been in conversations with them to sort of help fund that gap in physical access to the site.
Okay, just really quickly. So then the design right now is not contingent upon that expansion, like what looks like it really does connect to
That's the
south?
sidewalk I just mentioned.
Okay, I see, that is the sidewalk,
incorporate
so it really
that.
will connect.
Yeah.
And then can you just show where that building is?
So
Is it even on the map?
the Unity Electric site is actually off the map.
Okay, okay,
It's
so it's
down
down
there.
here. Got it, so it's to the south, so it's like, okay.
And they're, Deb mentioned this during her presentation, there's river access right there. So the river access paddle folks, Duwamish River Rowing Club, and others, that's where they sort of access. And so we want to make it as easy as possible because the grades are a little bit different. They're a little bit lower down there. And it's hard to sort of permit any kind of water access stuff. And there's also safety concerns, but we want to make that as accessible as possible from our side. So that's, and putting a new sidewalk facilitates that.
I'm sorry, the sidewalk you're talking about is at the kind of tail end of your project?
Yeah.
It's the curve, basically.
Yeah, right,
So,
okay.
yeah, right here, there's a little triangular parcel right here, and there's no sidewalk
Yeah.
on the shoreline side. So the idea is to add that sidewalk missing piece to make it safer and to really, have a continuous path along shore.
To move the kayaks from the temporary storage right now is to walk in the street. That's not fair. So.
Okay, I have one more question. Okay. And so then for the salmon habitat, I'm just wondering who your partner is in terms of just developing those kind zones and the hook. And it's exciting. Curious.
Yeah, it's been Herrera.
Yeah, Herrera's our
sub-consultant?
Yeah, so we've got quite a large consultant team with a lot of depth. But Zoom is going to be helping us with a lot of the landscape design for that element. And then we also have Carrera, who is part of our engineering team.
Can I ask a follow-up to that question quickly? Kate asked about engagement with the Duwamish tribe. The Muckleshoots fish the Duwamish. Have you talked to them about salmon restoration?
We are in the process of engaging with the Muckleshoot, who have many folks that are in the process of trying to engage with them.
Okay, yeah.
So we work with our tribal liaison as well as the intergovernmental department's tribal liaison to make sure that we are approaching that in the right way and through the right channels. And they know we want to talk.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Shireen, before we move to the next phase, I want to make sure that we have Eric have an opportunity to ask any questions. And then forgot to call on Omar Akari, who runs the Shoreline Street End program too. Eric, did you have any questions?
Yeah, sorry, I'm feeling a bit under the weather, so my brain's working a bit slow today. I don't think I have any questions, but I'm kind of loosely familiar with some of the environmental justice activism that happens down in Soto and South Park. So as some of the other fellow commissioners kind of said, I'm really appreciative of the kind of deep engagement that seems to be happening and like responding to the kind of ongoing environmental justice work that's already happening in the area. So yeah, I really appreciate the effort from all of your teams on that, and excited to see where the project goes next. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Did you say Omar has a question?
Omar, yeah, or or Omar Akari is with ESTA and he runs the Shoreline Street End program, which is pretty involved here. Sorry for not calling on you earlier.
All good. I just have some comments generally. So I'll probably be a secondary reviewer when you get to the point where you're bringing in a SIP for the roadway work. And some stuff I'd like you to think about between now and when you do that. I think that's probably the best time for me to insert myself other than this meeting. It sounds like you've done a wonderful project. We've talked a little bit about the periphery of the site. It'd be great to know if there's a lot of riprap, right, between your site and center line of the right of way, which is generally what the property owner is responsible for. So if you somehow find money to do additional cleanup work, I'm sure the Muckleshoot tribe, fisheries folks in the city, and everybody will be excited about how far you can push the bounds of cleanup along the shore. So I didn't hear, I heard sidewalk. Well, that's the upper portion, but is the project going to remove the riprap and do shop shore armoring similar to the shoreline up to the center line right of way? That'd be super great if you can find the budget to do that. To the north and to the south, so that'd be at 8th and also at 10th and Kenyon, where those intersect, would be wonderful to do, because it's every little bit we can chip away at the shoreline to de-armor or figure out what the correct level of armoring is that's soft as we can get away with the vital action and climate change coming in. That would be wonderful to see in the next iteration of your design work. Martin Fox is like the guy who talked to Muckleshoot Fisheries. If you do not get him to respond to your Army Corps stuff you submit for that early, like he ignored us when we submitted a project on 6, and then at 90%, he reminded himself that we existed and totally derailed 2 of my projects for several years. So talk to them early. If they don't engage you, find a way to engage them. It's going to be super important to a project of this scale. My tiny little 60-foot wide right of way. I started that project in 2022. I haven't built it yet as an Army Corps permitting. And those projects just have gravel. That's all we're doing is gravel work in the water. I'm literally just adding beach nourishment. That's the only reason I'm talking to Army Corps and the tribes. So if you get this project, which is a bit more impactful, you don't talk to them and they don't engage you, you really need to push the envelope and try to engage them. So that'll help you guys. If you haven't dealt with Army Corps permit before, it's difficult, and the tribe coordination makes it more difficult, even on top of that. So what else do I have? That was mostly it. So if you can answer the question about the scope, if you have that, great. If not, another time, that's okay.
If you have any follow-up, you want to email, we can send
That's
it along.
pretty much, everything else is great, honestly. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, with our proposed and preferred site plan shown here, you can kind of see that a lot of the existing shoreline is going to get kind of excavated and regraded to create this habitat. And so through that process, we will be removing a lot of the existing riprap along the shoreline. And so we'll be creating and revising the grade to make it a lot softer and more fish friendly as part of that. The only exception is at the northern part of the site where we have that existing dock that's going to remain. There is quite a lot of large riprap underneath the dock, and I believe that likely needs to remain just because it probably acts as some support and then just some, just prevents erosion around the dock itself, and so we don't want to create any issues there. But around that structure, there will be a lot of shoreline improvements.
But the edge is the right of way to, so within the intersection of Canyon and.
Oh, in the right of way itself?
Shoreline work there in the right of way? Or does it stop the property line, not extend it further south?
Oh,
That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, okay. Yes, I understand your question now. Sorry. So at like South Kenyon Street, for
Correct.
example.
Yeah, within the right of way there.
Yes.
where it extends into port controlled.
We
that
have
kind of
reached out to those.
Not according to them.
Okay.
It's sort of a.
It's
no
kind
one
of like a
owns
no
this.
man's land.
So they call them slivers,
Yeah.
remnants of sort of development over time, yeah.
Yeah, if we can coordinate, I guess, with you, if it is SDOT's, purview, like we should talk about what kind of improvements we can do to make that connection between the site and the park. Otherwise, I don't know kind of what jurisdiction we have to do that.
That might be a good
Other
follow-up.
than you're
Yeah.
doing similar work,
Yeah.
elsewhere, just
Yeah.
to improve the shore, it's like one of those things that's really complicated and expensive to the permitting.
Mhm.
And so as much as you can try to take on as much as you can, that'll help the community at large.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I try to think about it, because just the permitting is so laborious and difficult.
Mhm.
You want to try to make these projects as big as you can for the shoreline.
Yeah.
To make it efficient.
Okay.
It works. Someone else doesn't come in and do 4 or 5 years of permitting and project work to do another sliver that's really small like me, who is
Yeah.
$1 million a year project. Or just be like, can you fit the full shoreline street in between the park and yourself?
Yeah.
And just go and try to do that with grant funding, or however you get there,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, for $1 million.
yeah, really expensive.
That's right here.
That's 60 feet probably, yeah.
And that might
We'd
be,
love to follow up with you on that.
That's kind of my
Yeah.
problem.
How we
Just
can
try
do
to do as much with this project as you can along the
Yeah.
shore, 'cause it's super complicated and
shifting back to the vacation. Before you, one quick question before we talk about the actual implications of the vacation. Is this in the anadromous zone? Within where salmon switch from salt to fresh? The reason why I'm asking that, if this is in the anadromous zone where they transition from saltwater to freshwater, you have a unique opportunity to tell that story here. You're right by there. It starts occurring around there and goes down to the turning basin. This is where that all happens, and that's why it's a problem. So you have a unique opportunity to talk about why fish how they go from saltwater to freshwater,
Mhm.
and telling that story here.
Okay. I'm not sure, but we will look into that.
I do. Shireen, are you ready to walk us through some of the specifics with the vacation?
I can.
Okay.
if you Want to.
Yeah,
I
we're
have one
at
question.
11:40,
I have one
so.
question for Jeremy before we get there though. What are some of the main factors that kind of dictate the timeline of the 2031? Or some of the big challenges that kind of dictate that?
So did you say you had a question for Jeremy or?
Oh, sorry, for you.
For us? The challenge, so the risks to the project of meeting our timeline?
Yeah. So first, let me
I'll let the
just.
project manager.
So this is a project that has a consent decree requirement for it. And so we have a regulatory requirement to finish construction by the end of 2030. So that's really driving our schedule. But we do have a lot of risks We're still very early on in the design process. And then there's always risks that occur during construction. But some of our big risks include the complex permitting that we're going to have to go through, all of those reviews, getting approvals, working with the tribes. The site also, as a lot of sites in this industrial area in South Park, has historical contamination. So we're working through a site cleanup process with the Department of Ecology. And so right now we're really defining what that contamination looks like. And then we will move into developing a plan for how we will clean that up. And that process historically takes a very long time. So we're working very closely in coordination with them to figure out how we can keep that moving so it doesn't impact the schedule of the water quality facility itself. And so I think those are some of the biggest ones that we have. Yeah.
Moving to some conversation about this. So, talking about a public trust, circulation, access, utilities, free speech, public assembly, open space, light and air, views and land use and urban form. We've seen examples of that throughout the presentation. Anything specific that any of the commissioners want to have a concern about or want to talk about?
Could you read this one more time, more slowly?
Sure. Circulation, access, utilities, free speech, public assembly, open space, light and air, views, and land use.
Helpful.
We'll go back to the summary slide on public trust, Shane. We don't necessarily have to go through every single one of them. I was just,
Yeah.
and I know they've done a really great job mentioning all of those.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, we're at a pre-petition stage. I appreciate all the slides that you clearly you've been thinking through all of these. We will ultimately be voting on this when we get to the public trust phase. But for me personally, I don't see any big red flags regarding any of the criteria.
I thought they made the case, you know,
Yeah.
issue by issue.
Yeah, I think the vacation is obviously a no-brainer, right? Right. I mean, you're building something new and beautiful in an existing gypsum yard. But I think the only thing I think would be helpful to understand as you develop more is just sort of what the character of the fenced area is.
Yeah.
Because I think
I think that's right.
it has potential to feel like this excluded zone that you can go around. And not sure that is great in an urban context, you know, like I think a place like Discovery Park, which is obviously a totally different scale, but you know, the plant is there, you have no idea it's there, right? You're there with these sort of clever ways around it. I think in an urban context, you kind of want to be able to see through things and kind of not feel like there's a, I don't know, sort of, you know, black hole area that you're not supposed to be in. So I think just understanding the character of that as the design develops would be really helpful. But the public trust portion of the vacation is obviously, seems like a total no-brainer to me.
And to build off of what Subin was talking about, perhaps having that analysis of the fence be in conversation with Deborah for art opportunities as for either public art for some or for enhancements. That's great.
And a public benefit actually includes that. So if you guys have any comments about public benefits that you would like to see next time we meet with the team, this is the time to.
Yeah, I think I'm public benefit. I mean, the whole project is a public benefit.
Right.
So therein lies the challenge for us is because typically on a street or alley vacation, we're often looking at a, private project. And then what we always ask is, show us what you would have to do under code versus now what over and above you're doing that for public benefit. I think one of Deb's slides suggested that on like shoreline habitat, for example. I think the more clear you can be with us when you get to the public benefit discussion, that this is what we're doing over and above what we would be doing if we weren't doing a vacation.
Right.
Is really what we will typically be drilling down on. So I think just the more, we don't need to get into the details, I think, today, but those are the questions we always ask. So, yeah.
I have one quick question about views, and I'm sure this is definitely getting developed, but I think the commissioners would enjoy understanding when the views are not just into the water, but you mentioned that there's going to be direct views into the infrastructure itself. And so what is that experience like? I think both ways, because it is, so much, takes up so much space on the site. How can you really make that an enjoyable experience?
Actually, thank you for saying that, because I was thinking, I think there is the trail on the water side that's passing that, but yeah, starting, once the design is developed more, it's really understanding that experientially what that waterway park, what that waterway walk is and how it juxtaposes to the interior.
Yeah, that could be a really interesting time right between the habitat and the facility, and that, the juxtaposition of those two.
And we've been working closely with the maintenance folks to do as much of pulling back the fence so that you're actually walking adjacent to the bioretention itself. And then there's a lot of interest in that interpretation of like, what is the water quality facility doing?
Yeah.
And maybe that goes to what Michael was alluding to of like, there's multiple water stories happening on this site. So articulating and how they interact or don't. And the history of those interactions.
When the commission, this is an unusual project for everybody. You're getting rid of a thing to do a public good that is clear. When we see traditional vacations, you get rid of a right of way and a structure is created that is bigger than what you would normally see. I think the thing that jumps out to me is you're getting rid of a right of way. Don't create a wall along there. You have an opportunity programmatically, and for security purposes, you have to have a wall. Don't create a wall where you can create a public asset, because even though your buildings aren't doing that, you don't want to create a virtual or barrier by the loss of that right of way. You have a story to tell the public by doing this. You're doing a tremendous job along the water. Tell that same story on grade.
So in terms of how you visually would engage with that edge, yeah.
Deborah, I see you have your hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that this is where the art plan comes in, because the community made it really clear that they don't actually see a separation between the public benefit of the water quality facility itself and the more open space. They really like that the water's getting cleaned, right? So they are hoping that some of the art projects will have an educational component and replicate even have a hands-on interactive, hopefully we'll be able to have something where they can become like citizen scientists and replicate or understand or observe what the two-stage water quality process is, and come out really understanding that, and also the larger story of water and the Duwamish River. So hopefully that, like, everything that you're mentioning, not only, at least in my view, will be not necessarily blocked off by a fence, but the public will be invited into. And we're hoping that the art plan will hopefully be the connection between the space we're asking people to physically come into, and then the work that's being done to make it ecologically a safer, healthier space, and then people understanding and being part of that.
Any other comments? Thank you, Deborah. Great.
I think the only other comment, and it's kind of come up It's just obviously the public engagement you've done so far has been great. Continued public engagement, obviously the tribal engagement is going to be really important, and we saw some of the interdepartment coordination going on today, but yeah, the more obviously SPU and SDOT can be talking about all this, the better, but you're well on your way to all of that, and I'm confident by the time we do get it for action. And I personally just want to say that I'm really impressed with so many aspects of this project, but one of them is that you're planning for a different future, right? I mean, unfortunately, sea level rise is going to impact this river, and you're doing exactly what the city should be doing, which is looking at that future and trying to plan around what it's going to be and how we mitigate that to the extent possible. So kudos to SBU for thinking about that.
Yeah, and echoing that bigger picture thinking, just in terms of how you're modeling collaboration, it's outside of just this one parcel, but hopefully extending connection in both directions along the river for, making that spine of green and watershed more resilient.
Yeah, kudos to the community for putting together the Duane Valley Action Plan. It's very explicit instruction.
Yeah.
Part of the audit. So.
I have another quick question about the existing building that you're talking about for adaptive reuse. When you talked about the trying to partner with, tell me again who you were talking about.
Northwestern.
Yeah. That kind of public-private partnership model is, I think, working really well in other cases that are really different than this. But are you familiar with Kevin Burnell's work on creating a public-private partnership on the Aurora swales? It was a lot of work and
Yeah, SBU with Vulcan.
yeah, so it's a completely different situation, but there might be some
Oh,
ways that.
Not, sorry. Yeah, up and through.
Yeah,
Control
so
that.
they partnered with a developer who wanted to build the swales off-site. But they're doing matching funds now ongoing with other developers. And even though SPU can't really access those funds because that's in-house, but maybe this organization could access those funds.
Yeah, that's the GSI Beyond Code program.
It's the what?
The Green Stormwater Infrastructure Beyond Code
Yes.
program.
Yes, that's it.
I used to have that job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. That's also part of drainage and wastewater. Yeah, to your point, would be very much like trying to pilot and just try things. And those Troll Avenue projects were very much the city just trying to get a thing permitted. Like there was no money. It was just different jurisdictions meeting in the same place and a really good idea, trying to like push on that.
Yeah.
And so Kevin, who runs our policy shop, was, I think, instrumental in sort of pushing us to think, and Mamihara, our GM at the time, like, this is a good idea, let's get it to work, and then we can go that next step of like partnering maybe in more financial or technical assistance way. And that's what the program I mentioned purports to do.
Yeah. Okay. That was it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Would like to thank the team with the presentation. As you've heard, we're all very impressed with the amount of work and the community support you have. We're now voting for this project, which is the pre-petition and pre-design review for the South Park Water Quality Facility. We're excited for you to come back to us and to see where this project goes. Thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you. So nice to see this work. Great.
Thanks all.
Yeah.
Thank you. We want all of our work to
Thank you.
Robin, you can go ahead and turn off.
Thank you.
the camera. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Eric. Nice to see you virtually.
Bye, Eric. Bye. Bye, Deborah.
Yeah.